Hello, everybody! If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly, coming to you with an early show because we are joined by a very special guest today that I am happy to have on the show, Colonel Cabbage. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, thanks. How you guys doing?
Couldn't be better. Joining me, as always, is my forever and only co-host. He's here. It's Tyler. Tyler, would you like a funny story?
Sure, man.
About 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, I'll be generous, 10 minutes ago, Tom texted me and said, "What are we talking about tonight?" It's like, come on, buddy.
That's amazing. Yeah.
But to be fair to Tom, he's been heads down this week. His hobby time has been relentless painting to get ready for Holy Havoc this weekend. So, with the upcoming tournament crunch is always a time. So I was like, nah, man, you keep painting. It's good. We got this covered, dog. It's fine.
So you told him. You didn't just let it hanging for the next 5 hours.
No, that would have been very funny. But no, I did tell him straight up. Yeah, it's all good. As people roll in, we're going to start, of course. We're going to talk about Tournament Warhammer today. Talking about what makes tournaments great. Talk about how to make a great tournament. Maybe that's what I should have called this. How to make a great tournament. I don't know. I went back and forth on the name of this, and maybe I'll change it afterward. But if people think of a better title, please do as we go through the show, because we're going to talk about the elements of tournaments, what makes it a positive thing, how to run the best tournament for the players. Right? That's what you're wanting. You're wanting the players to have the best time. And sort of how do we get there, right? What do players like? What do we not want? What makes the best environment? All that kind of stuff is what we're going to discuss. It's going to be a good time. And Charlie is a TO extraordinaire, so more than...
I don't know about that. I've only done a couple.
They've all been very highly reviewed, and so that gives us some good information to work from. And I think we've all three of us have played in a fair number of tournaments as well, so we know what we like and don't like. All right, but Tyler, take us into some news, buddy. What do we got?
Yeah, so Rumor Engine, as always. It's looking like some kind of bug, some kind of big bug here. I mean, obviously my brain goes towards Sylvaneth or Tyranids. Charlie, you got any guesses on what the heck this thing is?
I think this is either the Red Terror from Tyranids, or it's a new Lictor/Death Leaper from Tyranids. They've got those sort of mandible things.
Yeah.
And those are really old sculpts.
They are.
Look at them. They're
Right.
horrendously old.
I tend to agree. This, like, don't get me wrong, they could throw us a wacky curveball, and it wouldn't surprise me that much, right? This turns out to be some kind of weird, like, bug head adornment on the back of a model, like an AOS model, and I'd be like, yeah, sure, why not? Like, I would have never guessed when they showed the close-up of the little bug hatching from the egg or whatever in a Rumor Engine, my guess would have never been Sylvaneth Trumpeter.
Sylvaneth Flautist, yeah.
Yes, exactly, right? So, like, sometimes they'll throw you some curveballs, but I agree with you. Like, we have to be due for an update to those models. They are ancient models.
Maybe it's like a grot holding a mandible that's torn off, and it's just going to hit someone with it.
Yeah, the only thing that gives me pause is the second one up in the top corner, going like this up in the corner of that piece. That
It's
almost makes me
pointed, right?
Yeah. That makes me think like, oh, it could be a wacky headdress.
Oh,
right? Because you could see the legs like going out, like in this kind of a thing. You see what I'm saying? Like, imagine that's the lowest left headdress piece. You with me? Like, imagine there's a face right here off to the side, off to the right of the current image. Yeah? And it's almost like a bug pointed iron halo is the best way I would describe it. Yeah?
Yeah, I think there's you can see the little crook of an elbow, though, right on the right-hand side, though. I think that's just another joint.
Could be. Yeah, certainly could be. You're absolutely right. These could be... could be just the joint. I'm just saying, like, if it was going to be a curveball, if it's that, I'm going to look super smart whenever this model comes out. Like, oh, yeah, that's exactly what I meant. Steve said I am very loud. Okay, I'm very loud. Why am I very loud? I don't seem very loud. There we go. I'll turn myself down a little. Hopefully that's better, everyone. All right. What else we got?
Yeah, we had the Warhammer Open Day, and where we got quite a few previews. I know you did a show on that on Saturday with Tom, and who else did you have? You had John on there, I think.
Yep, Tom and John joined me for the reaction show. That's right.
Yeah. So I don't know how much we want to talk about that.
Well,
Yeah,
look, my opinions have been well stated, but we haven't gotten opinions from either of you. So, Charlie, you're the guest. Hit us up first.
I was at I was playing the tournament when it was happening as a spare player, so I kind of missed it at the time.
Yep.
But sort of word filtered through that there was a new Nurgle tome. I'm with you, Vince. I'm not really a Nurgle guy. He's bottom rung on the Chaos Gods for me. But I'm happy it's coming out because I sort of see it as a necessary step on the road to the next Beast of Chaos book.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
got to happen beforehand.
Tell me if
Let's
this is
get it
better,
out.
everybody. By the way, my audio. I'm really trying to. Like, my mic isn't near my face. It's not. It's this far away. So, but that's fine. All right. And I have the gain way down, but we'll see. We'll see. I can keep adjusting. I'm not trying to redline and blow everybody's ears off. Yeah, I mean, Nurgle's clearly I agree, it's the lowest rung, but I think we were all hoping it was going to be a Beasts book because we felt like that was needed. Like, Nurgle had gotten a lot of love and attention recently,
Yeah.
but it ended up going the Doc route of like, well, this will probably be a big change. It'll roll the new models in, and some of the new rules will carry over, and there'll be a lot of new rules and stuff like that.
But when has GW ever done in the order of need?
Literally never. I mean, and if you think about that, that's not that surprising,
Yeah.
because like
Nurgle's
All
the
right.
oldest book too.
there, I shot the gain way down. We'll see if this is enough. Nurgle is the oldest book, yes, but also if you think about it, they have to start the book process 18 months, 2 years maybe for initial planning out, something like that, like probably 18 months ish. You don't know what the state of the meta is really going to be by that point.
Yeah.
Right? So it's hard.
It might be a case where they just decide there are too many rules spread across too many books for Nurgle at this point. Let's just put them all together, chuck it out the door.
Yeah.
Well, I saw Aurelian is building Nurgle, so that's all the confirmation I need. It's going to be powerful. I don't even know if he's still playtesting, but just by the mere fact, osmosis or otherwise, that Aurelian is building a Nurgle army. That's all we need.
There it is. That's your confirmation. Okay.
It seems potent. That disease rule, we haven't seen it yet, but that sounds pretty potent. Be close to people and take mortal wounds.
For the rest of the game, sure.
My Uncle Raiders don't like that.
Yeah, I mean, my guess is that's going to be the allegiance ability, though. That's the trick, right? Like,
Yeah.
it'll be like the wheel will go. You'll have that and your summoning points basically, right? And that's where it will be. Those are your allegiance abilities. The mortal wound passing thing, and then this is how you get your Nurgle grossness all over the board. My guess is they'll revamp some of the points calculations to make it more straightforward, as far as like counting it.
Yeah.
And then that's it. That's your allegiance abilities, right? And then
Mortal
everything
wounds
else gets
everywhere.
put- It's just mortal wounds everywhere. Yep.
Everyone's a Scraggerot.
Why not? Why not? It's Scraggroth the army. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. You get a Scraggerot. You get a Scraggerot.
All right. Anything else from the weekend that grabbed your attention there, Charlie?
The Red Gobbo, Rob was talking about it today as well, about how there's a new Red Goblin model and there's a new book and things. And I was just thinking, we had one last year, so we're getting annual Red Goblin models now, and yet I still have to endure people pushing Marauders and Salamanders at me. Can't they put those molds into other stuff rather than annual updates for a Christmas model?
It does make you wonder. Yes. Like, I have to wonder why. I like fun models. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Fun models are good, but at the same time, boy oh boy, you're not wrong. Like, I look at my Skaven, and I'm like, we could use some love. So but that's fine. I get it. It's easier to make one fun model likely than it is to make to redo an army that's in need of that much help and love. So all fair.
So probably like hundreds of thousands of pounds for a mold or something, right?
So they're using
Or-
the way they do the molds. Their molds, depending on the size of the thing, probably cost somewhere between, like, I can put it in USD. I don't know the translation, but probably cost between $30,000 and $80,000 per mold for
Okay.
like for a mass produced plastic of the size and quality that they're doing it, because you have to like diamond cut the steel with it. It's a very complicated process to get a mold that sharp and that effective, and it takes really highly skilled engineers to like people to do that. It's not a easy process, is what I'll say.
Yeah.
Getting visited here.
So it's fun for one, but annually it's pretty weird.
Kathy.
Hello.
Who's on from the UK? Is it Owen Jackson?
No, it's not Owen Jackson.
No.
Oh, it's not Owen Jackson.
Don't be mean to Charlie.
I mean,
this is
this
Colonel
is-
Cabbage.
I was at Owen's house yesterday.
Yes.
Absolutely. Practically equivalent to Jack.
She can't stop herself. I'm sorry. All right, I'll take him.
Okay. I love you, dear.
I love you too. Come on.
Wait, sorry, none of us compare to Owen, so
Yeah.
given up a long time ago.
He's a singular force in the universe, a celebrity above all else. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I went to see him yesterday at his house, and I felt pretty honoured to be there. And also, I enjoy how much he hates this.
It's all Kathy's fault. She walked in once and just out of nowhere pulled that out, and it was great. I'm so glad it's followed him around. It makes me endlessly happy. Okay. Cool. Anything else that we want to talk about from the weekend? I do have the red goblet, by the way. Cool bottle. It's fun. He's fun.
Yeah.
So, yep. All right, cool.
That's right. Train looks really good with Warcry.
Yeah, it does. I'm very excited about that new terrain. I think it looks really nice. So, hopefully we'll see. I love that we did the preview show the Warhammer Day, and then like the next day it was like, and also next week you'll pre-order this. Like, whoa, that was a fast turnaround. You really were keeping that one on the down low. So, yeah, fine, good enough for me. All right, shall we move on, gentlemen, to the next thing? Because I don't think we have any other news, right?
That's it.
That's it. Look at that, fastest news segment ever. All right, let's talk pick of the week. Charlie, you're the guest. You go first.
Yeah, I sent you an article written by a man called Peter H. His nom de plume is The Blind General.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little bit older, from the end of August, but I thought it's worth highlighting. It's about a guy who unfortunately suffered macular degeneration in his mid-20s, from his early 20s to mid-20s, leaving him, I guess, mostly blind. And he was playing 40k until this happened, and then recently he's been trying to work out a way to get back into the hobby. He talks about, in this article, the struggles he's facing and what he's doing to sort of mitigate those. For instance, they had to pick out a color scheme that would work for him for his armies. With macular degeneration, I'm not sure if you know much about it. I think you lose a lot of your central vision, but you still have some vision on your peripheries.
Okay.
My grandmother actually had it, and for some reason, she was quite eccentric, but she always said that she could see the television best with binoculars. We had no idea how that works, but you see better from the sides than the center.
Okay.
And in the article, he talks about purple being one of the colors he can see more clearly. So they had to pick a purple color scheme for his army so he could pick up the models. And then he's got someone who goes with him, I think, to measure distances and move models, and basically do call outs of where things are, but doesn't do any decision making. So he can then make decisions on what to do, and like help him roll dice and things like that.
That's
it's quite
super
interesting.
cool.
Yeah, interesting world view into how the hobby can be made accessible to people.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's amazing.
That article is linked down below, so it's in the description. Check it out. That sounds wonderful, and I love the idea that like a certain color was more easily visible to him. That's fascinating. Like I have to wonder what was going on there. So that's really cool. Okay, very good.
It's only short, but hopefully we'll get some more from him sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Tyler, what do you got for pick of the week for everybody?
Yeah, nothing nearly as inspiring, interesting as that, but I really enjoyed the Talking Iron Jaws with Donnie Gerlitz, one of the Detroit GT fellas. Coach had him on last week. So yeah, just really good show. Can't get enough discussion about it. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion about the new book, Battletome Iron Jaws, but yeah, I enjoyed that one. Donnie, I think he went 5-0 at Michigan GT with the new book, I believe.
Wonderful.
So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a AOS Coach, by the way. That's what you're talking about with. I don't think you mentioned Coach's name, but yes, this was Coach's interview with him. That is also linked below. It was a really good interview, and I'm worried, Tyler. I'm worried.
These pigs are too cheap.
I'm worried these.
Oh, they're way too cheap.
I'm worried these pigs are too cheap and too good for what they are. Like it's a problem. I don't want to see everything in that army shoot. Like I don't want
collateral damage because of the pigs.
Yeah, I don't want to see a bunch of stuff go up in points. Just make the scrolls worse. Like you can take away our Ren 2 on the pigs. It's cool. I'd rather just have the stats where they were. I didn't need that. Go away.
They're so good. They're 5 points cheaper than Bulgors.
It's not a favorable comparison for the Bulgor. Let me say that.
Yeah. Neither of those units are where they should be. Let's say that.
Right. So, I'm worried, but I'm going to enjoy this couple months of it being like this. So I guess.
Yeah.
The thing about Iron Jaws that I worry about is the new player experience. Like they have made an army that's so fast and so brutal. I have to put the Josh Brolin emphasis on it, right? Like they're brutal. And it's so fast and so brutal to new players that somebody who really doesn't know how to chaff properly or set up is just like, oh, I'm playing a game. Oh, I'm dead. What happened there? And it's all in an army that can 1 to 2 drop quite comfortably without losing any power. Right. So.
Yeah, anyway. They sit in a slightly weird space, maybe sort of a similar space to Sons of Behemoth in AOS 2, where they're pretty brutal to new players, but they might not necessarily go the distance in a tournament every time.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree. There's this very dangerous line where an army can be, completely handleable by sort of players who've passed a certain knowledge threshold. Like, alpha melee is not a thing that wins 5 games at a tournament. Like, just it barely has ever, unless it was so crazy overwhelming, because we've always had chaff and movement tricks and stuff like that, and now in 3.0 it's even worse. So you've got redeploy, you've got unleash hell, you've got all sorts of, you got all out defense, you've got options to protect yourself. And so alpha melee is even worse than always. Like it's an actual worse strategy as far as winning competitive games. But they're so brutal in how they compete that if you're a player that isn't at that knowledge level where you know how to fight them, they just kick you in the teeth, right?
Yeah.
So it's very hard to 5-0 with that kind of a strat. It's not. I mean, like they're perfectly competitive if played in a more careful way at the higher and they do have those multiple settings. But the problem is there's this huge gap in knowledge between highly competitive people and casual people, right? And the casual people just aren't ready for the thunder, as it were.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to us doing our in-depth show. I mean, like we talked about last time we brought this up. What's the fellow's name who did the show with Rob? That amazing PowerPoint.
Leo.
Yeah. It's like, well, God, Leo and Rob kind of covered it, but I do think, there's still some mileage there to be explored. And yeah, I don't know if I've ever played an army with that level of raw power. Like even, like Daughters of Cain, I was playing the Nod 15, it's only 10, as I would tell everybody, only 10 snake bows and Wrathy, not the full band. And this IJ felt just even crazier than that list. In the raw,
I played it at the weekends, and it was a lot of power. A lot of power coming in. Luckily for me, he sort of alphaed into my Hearthstone range, so I kind of slapped him back pretty hard. We spent about 2 hours on turns 1 and 2. Well, yeah, I mean about 6 models each.
Nice.
Amazing. Dr. Scotes, I'm just going to call you Dr. Scotevius, whatever. Don't come to me for pronunciations in the chat. Said alpha melee is mega NPE because you literally dominate your opponent. And it doesn't grow the game. It's bad for the game. Like, this is the problem. It's challenging for new players. But if you want a melee-only army to actually succeed in the game and be competitive, it has to be that threatening at the competitive level, because truly competitive armies generally play a mixed strategy, know how to like know how to mitigate such a thing with easy chaff and movement options, and don't find that kind of a thing threatening. So it's challenging, right? That's the challenge. Can you have an army that's actually remains competitive with a melee only strategy? This is the Khorne, Iron Jaws, all these kind of army problems. They solved it last time with Khorne by making it like a Johnny, ridiculous, overlapping ballet army, right? That's sort of this synergistic dance. But it's a hard line to walk, right? Because if you tip the wrong way, you end up with, I don't know, like Beasts of Chaos, for example. Right. And so it's...
no, I've told you, Vince, playing against experienced players, I've yet to have a successful, and I'm done. Like, supposed to have been done months ago with trying to alpha melee. It's like the most tempting army to try to alpha melee with, obviously, because it's so powerful. And even when your opponent apparently creates a perfect opportunity to do it, it still hasn't worked out, just in terms of how these games play out and all the different ways that you can counter it. Yeah, just anybody with a little bit of experience, like, it's not that difficult to counter alpha melee in my experience.
On the other side of the table, it's really fun just watching the Iron Jaws players say, oh, I really shouldn't take the turn, but I could just hit you.
Oh my god, yeah. Well, especially, if you're not the one drop, and a lot of times, of course, they're going to give you the first turn, and so you're like staring at your opponent, it's like, oh my god, I could do this! It's like, usually it's the worst thing for you to do. There may be a battle report channel that I like to talk about with an instance of this. I'll just say that if you wanna see this play out in a popular YouTube channel recently.
So I was 15 drops, most of the whole field, so I had no stress. Just put my stuff down and relax.
Nice.
What happens, happens.
Oh yeah, it's an incredible way to play all day, man. You can counter deploy the whole field.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So let's move on from that. But yes, good stuff. It was a great discussion. For my pick of the week, our buddy Hooves of Doom, friend of the show, is back and has a wonderful episode on the Anvil of Apotheosis and the sort of origins of the linguistics of it. I love this kind of stuff. He digs into a lot of like real history and shows where like the inspiration and the etymology of these words and stuff come from. So it's just a cool episode. Like, I love, Hooves makes very unique content in this way, like exploring this kind of linguistics and stuff. So I'm down for it. So check it out. Everything we've mentioned is linked down in the description. And I just saw that we are joined by the Owen Jackson in the chat. And Owen, you missed my wife, who already asked about whether or not you were here. When she heard there was a UK guest, she got really excited. So there we go. Okay. So let's talk about some hobby time, guys. Charlie, what have you been working on, man? What's on your table?
Well, after TOing a few events, I needed to play a bit. So I signed up to be the Slayer player for the War in the Mortal Realms. So if anyone drops, I play, that sort of thing. And so that was an opportunity for me to try out my new Beasts of Chaos list with 5 Doom Bulls. So I started painting my special Doom Bulls from Zealot Miniatures. So I got this chap who's my Arcane Tome Shaman Doom Bull here. Then
lovely.
I've got this guy. Let me get a white thing for you. This guy, he's got the Cleaver of the Brass Bull.
Nice.
And then I've got this chap who's got the Mutated Gnarlblade.
Ooh, I like
Love
him.
Yep, and then when they die, they turn into Chaos Spawn.
Yeah, you had me up until Chaos Spawn, but okay.
So I was painting those chaps so I could have WYSIWYG Doom Bulls with no amulets anywhere near the list.
Fantastic.
Man.
Here's one thing I will say. In all the time I played Beasts, having your heroes that die pop into Chaos Spawn and just suddenly be there, just being like, is one of the most fun rules, interactions, or effects.
Oh, it's amazing
in the game. It's wonderful because the people are so happy they killed your guy, and then you're like, yeah, but
he's a spawn now.
Yep, exactly.
And I love that in the lore, the spawndom is the greatest form of life. Mm-hmm. So it's their version of apotheosis. So they're thrilled that you've killed them and turned them into a spawn.
Exactly. If you look at the difference between like in the Slaves of Darkness Path to Glory table or whatever, right? it's the worst result. It's like you
Yeah.
rolled Snake Eyes, you're cursed to spawn them for the Beast of Chaos. They're like, no, this is where we're going, buddy. This is the goal
This is
state.
great.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know if you, Charlie, if you read any of the like web comics they do, but if you watched,
No.
that's fine. They have a web comic I enjoy called Never Chosen, and
Oh, I have still heard that. Yeah.
and recently they had a funny little aside where the Beast of Chaos, like a Minotaur and a Shaman, are sitting around. They're like, we need to get more people to believe in our religion or to come join us, right? And well, how are we gonna do? He's like, they're like, what's your religion? He's like, well, we worship this goat, and he's just like a regular goat. And they're like, well, nobody's gonna worship a regular goat. And so the shaman's like, I'll hide weird prophecies around the world. And then it cuts to the two Nurgle guys who find this ancient prophecy and are like, this is the one true Lord. We've got to go find this goat.
I did see that. I enjoyed it. Yeah.
That's great.
So yes.
So yeah, I played that. That was fun. I managed to get 2 wins, and then I had to drop to even the numbers on day 2. But it was still great to take part in a bit. Then yesterday, I went into the Owen Jackson's house to meet Darren Watson, and we did a little play testing for his upcoming Nomad Feastmasters book.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
The halflings
Yeah.
are about to roll. I'm so
Yeah.
excited.
And I got to play the Nomads against my own Beast of Chaos army, and that was a lot of fun. And knowing what my army does, I was pretty terrified when Darren threw chimeras and gorgons in my face right at the top of one.
That's amazing. I can't wait
Yeah.
to see what he does with that. I'd like to see that project come to fruition. It's such a labor of love, and it's the coolest thing. Halflings are an untapped resource in the mortal realms. Like,
Yeah.
you know, we know they survive. We know they're around. They get mentioned sort of every so often. Like, let's get them going here, people. Like, a little bit of jocularity is good. Let's have some
Yeah.
fun, right?
And it was
I think I
it was great
saw-
fun to play, and I think everyone will enjoy it when it finally makes the table.
Fantastic.
I think I saw printable scenery. Their latest Kickstarter or whatever is sort of Hobbiton themed, halfling themed. So yeah, folks should check that out. Yeah, I looked
Yeah.
at the website today, and yeah, some cool looking stuff. Is Darren generally an aggressive player? I watched a battle report with him, and he played very aggressively and very well with Seraphon. It was quite impressive. Just like he was using skinks brilliantly, and double moving and blah blah
Was that
blah. but he
the
was so
Super
aggressive.
Series?
I think it was, yeah. But it was
Yeah,
like
I
it
was the table boss for that game, and he
Oh,
was
nice.
just in the zone,
Oh
really
my
in the
God,
zone.
yeah. It was just like boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom, but very aggressive.
Yeah.
Is he usually like that, or just army list?
Well,
dependent, or-
I think when he's in the tournament, he zones in, right? His
Yeah.
ultimate focus. But the game yesterday was just a big laugh, and we were joking and chatting and things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, he's a really nice guy.
Fantastic. Tyler, obviously you didn't paint anything. I'm going to always open with that until you actually paint something and we get you into what is a very enjoyable part of this hobby that you could absolutely do and are more than capable of,
Sure.
but you didn't.
Yeah.
Did you get any games in?
Yeah, I'm still testing away on mid-shell friendly Stormcast. So enjoying the pain of 400 points of Judicators, 10 Judicators versus 6 long strikes like everybody else is doing, sensible folks. And yeah, man, like Judicators versus long strikes, like that epitomizes our whole, really all of us. We've been talking about this gulf between 4-up base and 3-up base.
Sure.
Because you basically can't shoot Judicators at anything with a 3-up base.
Sure.
Unless you feel really good about rolling 6s. And yeah, it's painful. So now I got a game in against the lovely. I sent you a bad words in front of Vanguard last night, just randomly.
Yes.
'Cause I had the pleasure of 6 Vanguard and Knights of the Empty Throne plus another 3, and yeah, that's not fun at all. 280 for 3 Vanguard right now, something like that. 285, whatever it is, it's too cheap. It's absurd what you can do with Vanguard right now in Knights. Just absolutely absurd.
They're
So
strong.
not tempted by long strikes then.
But
Not tempted by long strikes with the crossbows.
I'm trying, I mean, obviously, yeah, that's the play.
Yeah.
But I'm trying, yeah, the list. I'm just trying to be a special snowflake as always with the Stormcast list and not press the easy button. The more that I play, Stormcast though, Charlie, I am wondering if long strikes are as maybe bad, or, as MPE, toxic, healthy as they appear on paper. Like I think you can definitely obviously lean into it heavily, but I mean that
I find they have a special magic to make more six appear than usual.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I I think a way to tone them down is to not do the one drop. That way you don't have the potential, double turn on the table, which would be just from that one unit of 36 shots that you could put out before your opponent does anything. It's kind of like I was telling Vince, it's like a repeat of that Vanguard Chamber one drop. Like, so I feel like maybe that'll help tone them down a little bit if you don't play them in a one drop. But yeah, the list was Bastion is incredible, Vince.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I'm
my God,
so
yeah.
excited for him to get him on the table. I can't wait to convert Rat Bastion or Rashtian, Ratstian, as I will call him. Yes, he's going to be amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Just the Chad of Chad Stormcast rats. Like he's ready to go.
He, I mean, it's not even been close. Andrasta and Prime versus him in my test game so
That's
far.
amazing. I do really like
Yeah.
my Yendratsa conversion though, so I gonna paint her up. So honestly, I'm getting the first 1,000 points in. I got a lot of. I've got to do like 2 more battle line units. That's the problem because I have like 3 different battle line units painted, but they can't all be battle line simultaneously in the current army I'm playing. That is to say,
Yeah.
like I have 1 always battle line and 2 battle line in different scenarios, which
Yeah.
is fine for the 1,000 point tournament I'm doing this weekend. But so like I've got my perfect scenario would be get my second unit of Vindictors done, a second unit of Annihilators done, and a second unit of Fulminators done. That way I can sort of combine them and use them however I want. But what I really just want to do is start painting all the big characters, and I know if I go down that road, I'll never look back. It'll get to the point where I can't paint the big guys anymore, or I can't go back and paint the little guys after the big guys, I should say. I want to answer a question that came up here. Drew Craddock said, "Why do people run Varangard in squads of 6 with Knights of the Empty Throne? Wouldn't the new coherency rule make that less appealing?" No, because 6 is a 30 wound hero, effectively, that can pile in from 6 inches, so it has a 22-inch threat range running around the table, and yada yada yada. And the coherency doesn't really matter. They can still all fight if you have when you have the luxury of the 6-inch pile-in and their ridiculous move, the fact that they can run and charge and retreat and charge through their garbage 6-inch pile-in artifact. A rule that should be struck from the game and should have been unmade in 3.0 and yet somehow squeaked through. It's toxic and shouldn't exist.
This place.
Right, but like, and you can run in what I call the chicken feet formation, which is
Yeah,
this.
it's the base,
Yeah.
right?
Right. So
If you
it's,
rotate the round, it's still round. If you rotate the oval, you get
right.
angles.
Yeah, so this is chicken feet formation, right? Every one of my fingers here is a Varangard, and so they can all still get into stuff.
Trav had all 6 get into 1 inch reach, but all 6 got into 10 Vindictors.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the 6 inches, it makes it a lot more manageable to get the 6 in.
Right. And so, the reality is, plus if 1 dies, which is not actually as common as I would like, but it happens. Especially if you have some kind of mortal wound shooting, that's literally their only Achilles heel. So I mean, hey, Raptors, decent at
Hi,
handling that.
Raptors.
Yeah,
Indeed, yeah.
You're back. Welcome back.
Love that, yeah.
But high rend and/or mortal wound shooting is obviously one of their weaknesses. But when 1 dies, then you just pop into normal formation, and you're like, "Oh, we ride." It's just like that's it.
I like that you said if 1 dies
Yes,
at the
if
start,
if
not when.
Yeah.
no, I've been through whole games against that army where 0 died, despite me giving it the college try.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it
I
can
think, like,
happen.
are you? The fact you can get the reroll hits and wounds apparently from Mark of Chaos on the shrine on the wagon,
Oh, sure.
and as a backup to demonic power, and yeah, you can just do insane safe stacking, and they can do finest hour on a unit of 6 variant. It's just like
Yeah, I mean,
it's
there's
a
like
little much.
I think there's 7 or 8 different versions of potential +1 save available to Slaves to Darkness, and it's not unusual to have
Yeah.
6 of those in an army. And so, like, having them be on 2 up, ignore all rend, is it's like, okay, it's table stakes, right? So
Yeah.
and 30 wound heroes turns out decent.
Yep.
Weird thing there. I'm glad this earlier time is. I see a lot of people saying, "Yay, I get to catch one live." Well, hey everybody, welcome. I'm happy to have you here live. I would like to do this show at this time more often. It's just often challenging because life and stuff. But hey, we're glad to have you all here, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe and do all that fun stuff. So hit that like button. 2 people hit the dislike button before we even went live, and I was just like, okay, I guess they just don't like the idea of tournaments. So, but I'm very glad that this time is more friendly to everybody over in Europe and such like that. I love having everybody here live. So hello everyone who's not normally gets to be here live. My hobby time this week has been busy as I'm working on some stuff I can't show. I finished up something that's a surprise for someone this weekend. So I can't show that either. It's in that case back there, turned around backwards. I had to make the book for my army. So like I actually went and made a booklet with finished up my my Ratcast for this tournament. Got pictures of all of them, made a special book for them. Had to write like a 5,000 word story for Skig for my warlord. So he now has his own fiction. And nobody wants to read that, but I wrote it anyways. So there we go. The TO asked for a story. You ask, you get. So I had those printed and picked those up today. Just getting everything ready and packed up. So for the big tournament this weekend, I still got to break down our ridiculous display board. So that's my next step after the show tonight is to bubble wrap that all up and pack it so I can actually safely transport it to the tournament. Oh, display boards, how I hate you. Okay, so. Yeah, I know. Like, I just got a bunch of things I can't show. What a great section for me, right?
Oh, there's one that wasn't on our list that we should. Yeah, display boards. Should they be a thing of the past for tournaments?
Oh my god.
Or like,
please.
Don't make it part of the core like requirements for getting like baseline points. Like if you want to do a display board as part of trying to go after an award, fill your boots. But
I would really like it if our display boards were just like everyone will display their army on a standard Warcry unfoldable board, and I'd be like, yeah, great, fantastic. Because that's the thing. Even if it remains for best painted, then I'm still going to have to do it up, and I do one of these things a year, and they're just like incredibly time intensive and huge and hard to transport. And then when I'm done, I don't know what to do with this ridiculous 2 foot by 2 foot by 3 foot tall thing that I've constructed, right? And I want to be the best, like that as it is, like be best. Like it's part of my instinct with painted. Like it's part of what I want to do. I want to make a hobby project that's truly memorable for people, right? I just hate that this has become such an indelible part of that as opposed to sort of the miniatures or whatever. So
it also takes up a lot of space on the display tables.
So much.
If you're a TO paying to hire tables, then that can be annoying if people take up loads of table space.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Okay. All right. So let's get into the topic today, gentlemen, shall we? All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you all hear my dog when it barks like that in the background? I don't know if you can hear that or not. We'll see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, she's fine. She's a good dog. She's very mouthy. All right. Let's talk tournaments. So, let's bring up our presentation here. There it is. By the way, everybody, I promise in future weeks I will get back to stuff that I can show when I paint. I promise. Okay, so Warhammer Tourneys. Let's start with our little introduction here. Boop, boop, boop. Sorry. Summary. All right, here's my statement. There is a great deal of variance in the way tourneys are run. Right? We all accept that. Now, I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm just going to state that as one of my first principles, that I don't think that it's a bad thing that TOs largely get to decide their own fate, can make different tournaments, create different experiences. I think that's very positive. And I think that in the end, there's a sort of meritocracy to it. If you put a bunch of rules on your tournament and no one shows up, well, there you go. You kind of shows instantly whether or not it's going to be a thing. Like over the years, one would hope that tournaments that are run well grow and tournaments that are run poorly die. But it has an impact on the players participating. And so I think what we want to do today is we want to talk through, and I have a list of sort of things here, like scoring systems, awards, soft scores, painting requirements, round timings, matchups, proxies, scenery, ephemera, all sorts of things that we think make for a good tournament as a sort of baseline of, if not a best practices, then at the very least the sort of items you should consider as a TO and the type of things you should look for as a player. So if you're a player and you're thinking about the type of tournament experience you have, how these decisions made by the TO are going to marry with your experience, right? Because if you're looking for something soft and fun and like very narrative, or that maybe isn't just full of like, you know, the hardest edge stuff, and you look at the list and everything in the tournament seems to be incentivizing hardcore play, that's not going to be a fun experience for you, right? I'm using sort of a straw man just to make the example clear, but I think that this is this is clearly sort of where what I want to avoid and arm people with. So, Charlie, you recently, as you mentioned, were doing a lot of TOing. So what were your sort of first principles? What were you going for? What was your goal? How did you think about setting the answers to your to questions? How did you set up this kind of stuff, right? When it comes to anything that's on the screen here or whatever.
I mean, I'm fairly new in a way to running tournaments. Doing my first big ones this year and a few small ones before that. I think I was sort of focusing on getting my pack, getting my pack solid was the main concern I had at the start. When I was sort of got the name of the episode today, what makes tournaments great, my first thing I wrote down was people. People make tournaments great, and as long as there's a lot of logistical work that goes into running events, getting tables and mats and terrain and food and toilets and signage and making sure people are signed up and have lists and things. That's all work that needs to be done. But assuming that's done to a passable degree, people will pretty much have fun with whatever happens because they're just going to enjoy interacting with other people. Or not, as the case may be.
Sure.
And a lot of that work is going to not really be reflecting on how well you do as TO. As long as you can get it functional, then people will have a good time. And once you've got that, you can get rolling. You can start making improvements, tweaking your pack, making terrain packs, improving player experience, tightening up your system, that sort of stuff. So for me, it was basically, I want to make sure I've got a pack that's simple, clear, functional, and will be, like a baseline that I can work from. And once I've got that and I've sorted all the logistic side, I've got that sorted and I know what I'm doing with that, then I can start building for the future. I think that's where I am at now. I've got 2 big tournaments medium-sized tournaments under my belt now, and I'm looking at how I can build.
Nice. Okay. Awesome. Tyler, what about you? What are your first principles, this kind of thing? Like, what are you looking for? How do you think about this?
Yeah, the point about people, I mean, that goes without saying. That's certainly the first critical one. I mean, that's like we both have loved NashCon over the years in particular. We've that's the event you and I have gone to.
Yeah, I mean, as a point of fact, all of the tournaments that I attend and make a thing to attend every year are the ones where I know it's all the people that I love and want to see and hang out with, and I know it's run well, that the TO is a good person, and I want to support the kind of goals that they have. Several of the tournaments I go to are involved with like charities or something like that, right? So it's that kind of thing, like it's a good person running it, there's good people there, you're going to have a good time, right? So I think that is critical. And I think stuff like that, it's not in my presentation, but like the holy events, so Holy Wars and Holy Havoc, what I'm doing this weekend, run by Steve Herner, a big portion of that is charity, right? Like he allows for sort of extra kinds of purchases. He has a big raffle. The money you donate goes to charity, right? He allows for this like tournament reroll die you can buy. You get this one little special dice. It's a special color. It's made there, and you can buy it, and then you can reroll any one non-priority roll in each game. Okay, with that one little die. It's a little thing. And all that money goes to charity, by the way. Like that's all directly donated to his local, to local charity, to actually housing homeless people, feeding people who are in desperate need. It's fantastic. And it says a lot, right? Like, I like participating in that because I'm like, oh, cool, I get to play Warhammer and help the world be a better place. That feels pretty good, right? Like, that's a real win. So that kind of ephemera, I think, can be really valuable.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I find that tournaments don't need to have special sauce. Though personally, I am biased toward it. It seems more drawn to tournaments that have intriguing special sauce, that are doing something unique in some way, whether it's charity or it's con schemes and two-list format, or it's Brendan Melnick's wide array of awards that you can win, where he's really leaned into, creating broader incentives for, serving broader player interests, a broader array of player types. And you can go down the list. I'm sure there's, similar ones in the UK and around the world that we can point to. Yeah, I really find that intriguing personally.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of elements, yeah, in terms of first principles. So one on this list stands, I mean, we've got a number that are more the nitty-gritty, which I know we're going to get into a lot of the nitty-gritty here. I do think the scoring system to me is a very important one. I
Yeah.
think there can be, yeah, some real variance and the sort of quality and my interest in a tournament in that regard. That gets into also soft scores, which we've got on this list. And, that's always been an ongoing debate in the community. Should we have tournaments that are more purely scoring around battle points? Or should we still continue? We generally have this best overall and best general as like that top tier, or sort of, like that's that its own category into itself, best overall and best general. Then, you've got best painted, best sports, and everything else. Should we still have that separation? Should we still have best overall with top scores, or should we be doing something different? Should we be orienting around more of like a bracket system that Rob and Charlie and others have been talking about? So I think that, to me, that's a really interesting kind of part of the conversation right now in the community and where we are trying to figure some of this stuff out.
Yeah. So I mean, you've already prompted it, so let's get into it, my friend. Let's talk about it. So, scoring systems. Let's do it. So, let's talk scoring systems, because this is one that I think can be interesting regardless of whether or not you go to plan to win. Okay? And what I mean by that is, we're going to talk about awards later on. And my honest answer is I care a lot less about awards than I do about the scoring system. Like, I want to see good awards, and we'll talk about what I mean there. But, like, almost no matter what your awards are, a minority of people at the tournament are going to win those awards. That's,
Yeah.
Right? That's just what it is. Right? Like,
Yeah.
it's there. If you got 100 people, even if you have a broad set of awards, 10 people or something might walk away with it, right? So 10% of your population. Now it matters to them. It's a huge deal, and we all like it's great and fun, and you love winning stuff. But the scoring system is something everybody feels, every player in that tournament, every round. Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so that's why I think it matters. And so, we've got a couple different items, and Charlie, I'm going to come over to you here and get some initial takes on this. Overall scoring, you've got this sort of standard concept of win, lose, or draw, right? And those can be scored in different ways. A win is worth X, a minor win is worth this, a draw is worth this, and so on and so forth, right? That's kind of the general way that gets broken out. And then there's also been talks of like the 20-0 differential system and some use for that, even as a primary scoring method, though it can also be a secondary, right? And then we've got all these ancillary concerns, because the reality is we do not play enough games of Swiss to really finally get to a precise field, right? In the general size of our tournaments. Smaller tournaments, sure. But like once tournaments creep up there, past basically 60 people, you're going to have distinctions, you're going to have overlaps, things like that, right? And so there's all these other ancillary items that could also help stratify out the tournament and so on and so forth. So how do you think about this as a whole? When it comes to this scoring, what do you see as the advantages, disadvantages, so on and so forth?
I mean, the first thing to say is that no scoring system's perfect. like obviously. And
Mm.
as you said, the more players you get, the less accurate it's going to be. Because a winner could very easily, if you have a field of 300, 600 players like you do in 40k, the winner could have a very easy run just by avoiding all the other top players. So
Mm.
you've got to try to pick a system that's the best you can at the time and how you feel it's going to work. You've got the win-loss draw and the 20-0. I think there are merits of the 20-0, but I think the win-loss draw, for me, has to be the first primary.
Mm-hmm.
I think the 20-0 system just causes too many problems for the players. People get a bit disgruntled. I won 3, they won 2. Why are they higher than me?
Sure.
At that basic level, and then also it can just kind of make weird results where you lose table 1, game 5, and you drop to 30th place somehow.
Yeah.
Right.
Thinking like, how did this happen?
Yeah,
You
that
know?
experience as well. Yeah. Charlie, we were talking, Charlie, before the show about. So first off, this disclaimer. We were also noting about how much we were blown away by War in the Heartlands.
Yeah.
And Mark and Liam and Steve Foote and everybody else involved with that tournament. It was remarkable, top to bottom.
Annoyingly good.
Annoyingly, yes, that was your phrase. Annoyingly good, yeah. So there is a but coming, for better or worse, and this is just an opinion, and that's the whole point of this discussion is that trying to figure some of this out. I'm actively trying. I told you, Charlie. I told Vince, I'm actively trying to figure this out because we've got our first 2-day grand tournament finally happening locally next year in May, and so when I saw their standings with War in the Heartlands, it was a little odd because like Ben Harper, who took Sylvaneth and a Winterleaf Sylvaneth list for that matter, it wasn't the Math-Malo range damage, range projection list. It was Winterleaf melee. Get in there and get some work done. He went 4-1 with Sylvaneth. And I looked at where he was and was like, I can't remember where he was way down there. It's like, but this guy's 4-1 with Sylvaneth. Must have had a number of close, but because the way the scoring system was, he had a lot of close games. I would guess, he wasn't wiping people out as you wouldn't expect with that list. So it was a hard-fought 4-1. So I did find that a little strange as an example of.
There is value in the 20-0. This goes back to the point you made, Vince, about people like having a huge field. If you've got 100 players at your event, 99% of them aren't the winner.
Right. Right. Yes.
So, and we've got to think like if you're on a TO, you're in the events business now. You're an event organizer. You're an events business, hospitality in some way, right? You've got to provide an experience that's good for 100 people, not the 1%, the guy who won, or the girl who won,
right?
The person who won, right? You've got to make a pack, a scoring system, awards, an experience that caters to everybody, right?
Yep.
Someone once said to me, like, why are you giving out pity points for losing? That's totally the wrong way to think about it. You've got to say, okay, you play your game, the game has value, but I'm incentivizing you to keep playing the game because I'm giving you something for losing. And it's not pity, it's giving people a reason to keep playing bad games, bad matchups, a reason to come back for the next round, a reason not to stay in bed day 2 when you're hungover.
Right.
You're giving out incentives to people. The awards are incentives. That's an important part of it. But most people don't win awards either. So you've got to give a reason for people to keep playing games. And that's when you use a 20-0 system. It gives you something for your effort. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It recognizes your effort. It recognizes, well, there are obviously limitations to your army type as well. But it's about giving an experience to every player at the event, not just the people who win the brackets.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think they chose the 20-0 system. They put it in the pack. It was there. Players signed up knowing that was what's going to happen. So that, there aren't any complaints. There shouldn't be any complaints about it because it was forewarned. I think the win-loss draw system is better because it avoids those sort of bad feels. Feels bad,
Mm-hmm.
You get some feel bad moments if you have the 20-0 as the primary. If you have a win-loss draw as the primary, you can sort of people understand that a bit more,
right?
And they sort of they respect the win-loss draw a bit more, and they're happy with. Then they can look to their secondaries and think, yeah, this is what I got. Because with the
then, like I
win-loss
said,
draw, you're going to have those brackets going to be filled with people because it's such
and,
it really doesn't differentiate people because it's so, I guess, tertiary.
yeah, like I said, with the example of Ben, and I'm sure there were some others, but I feel like, yeah, if the 20-0 is the primary, it can punish those who choose to take a mid-shelf list, but who try to overperform with it. It's part of their psychological profile. They're taking a challenging list. I feel like that's a way of punishing them. If you're not doing it by the win
Yeah,
loss.
let me jump in and just let's lay this down. So when we talk about primary versus secondary, right? Let's lay this down for everybody. Okay. So what we mean when we say primary is the number that you're writing down as your points for the round, right? I.e., when we get to the end, and if I am in the Excel spreadsheet that everything is being tracked in, or the software or whatever, and I hit sort, highest to lowest, right? This is the primary sort. And when you're win, loss, or draw, the advantage is it's clean, right? It's super clean. A win is worth a win is worth a win. A loss is worth a loss. A draw is worth a draw, minors, and so on, right? Like, there are set numbers. You perform this well, you hit this bar. It's a pass the post system, right? You pass the post, you get that amount of points. It's predictable. It creates stratification that you can understand, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to look at the list and be like, yep, that person's up at the top. They went 5-0, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then yada, yada. Okay. The downside of it is it can feel like, because as you said, there's no perfect system. These both have positives and negatives, right? The downside of win, loss, draw is that it can sometimes feel like you have nothing to play for, right? If it is the only thing alone, you feel like, oh, well, actually, why even bother to keep playing, right?
I lost game 1. I can't win the tournament now.
Right, exactly. Like, if that's what it is, like, I might as well just stop. And you see this happen a lot in 40K, where people will just, where people will just be like, okay, drop. Like, if people just drop. I would see this in Magic all the time.
Yeah.
Right? Where people will drop out one game and just stop. They just stop playing, right? So, and there's other ways to keep incentives going besides just the primary scoring structure, but this can be a contributory factor. The 20-0 system, the advantage, if it's primary, is that there's kind of always a reason to keep playing, right? Because if you can draw the game closer, even if you still lose, you could push it to like, oh, it's an 11-9, i.e., both players are scoring a total of 20 points, is what that system breaks down to, right? So you 11-9 or 10-10 or 7-13 or whatever, right? And the advantage is that, okay, I can push for a closer game, and I still get more points, right? I played a good game. I played till the end. I get more points, right? There's a direct reward there, a compensation for it, which makes sense. Keeps people playing, keeps people interested. There's a reason to show up. Even if you think you're going to lose the game, there's a reason to keep participating. There's a reason to keep playing the games, right? Because you can kind of push above. The downside of 20-0 as the primary is that it tends to punish in two different ways. One, the way you just said, Tyler, right? Where if you want to take a sort of mid-shelf list, if you're trying to outperform, right? Yeah. If you do super well with Beasts of Chaos, again, I'm going to keep hitting them, Charlie, because you're here, right?
Yeah.
But like, if you go 4-1 with a Beasts army on a win-loss-draw system, you look like a hero because you're probably in that top 10, right? Yeah. But if you go 4-1 with a Beasts army in a 20-0 system, you're probably like 30th place. You're probably mid-pack. Because let's be honest, those games, I mean, they're just not going to be blowouts.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to be won through careful play, through board control, through playing to the objectives, to like very precise trading, right? And knowing exactly what your stuff is worth. Like playing the big brain Beasts player, which is how Beast players have to play to win right now, right? They don't have like a button they can just windmill slam to blow the enemy off the table. It doesn't exist. So they will end up with a bunch of 11-9s and 12-8s, right? And meanwhile, there's going to be somebody who's 3-0, or 3-2, sorry, 3-2, who's going to outscore them because they had 3 games, they were playing Giants, and they just like raffle stomped their opponent, right? Yeah. And it's like, oh good, the 3-2 guy beat me by 15 points. Fantastic, right? Even though I went 4-1. And that's a feel bad, and that can happen. The other downside is it can sort of unintentionally punish really good players who accidentally get paired against each other. right?
Yeah.
So if you have two like top shelf players, or really just two equal skilled players who come against each other, right? They will tend to 11-9. Like that's just sort of the modal outcome. I think of like the game that Jack Armstrong played against Benjamin, right? And that was like you watch that game, that was such a precise, careful, back and forth, measured game that was like always destined. You could tell on turn 2 it was an 11-9 or a 12-8. Right? It was never going to be anything else. Nobody was going to blow the other person off the table. They're both too good. They both have too much skill at navigating, even with limited resources. Right? So,
just as we mentioned many times, just the way the game works now in 3.0, you're going to have a lot more of that, which is generally a good thing.
Yeah, good.
To be celebrated.
Yeah. So the problem with it is then when you have, it's not just for good players who get matched against each other, though that is true. It's when equal skilled players, or equal footing players, match against each other. Skill matters a lot more at the high end of the curve and a lot more at the low end of the curve, and blah blah blah. And the mid tier, your army matters a lot more. But when that happens, suddenly those people fall in the ranks for reasons they played the best game of Warhammer. That 11 win represented a lot better Warhammer being played than the guy who got 20 points.
Yeah.
That's the challenge. Right? Like if your points are meant to represent the quality of the game of Warhammer you played, it's not accurately reflecting that reality, right?
You can also have strange things where the player who wins goes up and plays a harder opponent, and they have another tight game. Then the player who loses goes down, faces an easy opponent. They get the blowout, and they just leapfrog back up again.
Right. Right. Exactly. So that's ultimately my problem with the 20.0 system. So to me, like, the challenge is that I like 20.0 as a secondary. I think it's interesting as a secondary system. I don't think it as a primary. I want to address something in the comments real quick. Nicholas Bordas said, "Don't they also neutralize in win, draw, loss?" No, they don't. For this reason, if I win by 1 point, so when Jack beat Benjamin, he won by like a couple points, right? But that's a win. If he satisfied a major win or a minor win, it's a win and it's worth whatever that is set to in the tournament pack, right? If it's 15 points or 25 points or whatever arbitrary number of points the TO has picked, right? And whereas the minor loss is worth 7 or 5 or whatever, or the loss is worth 0, or again, whatever arbitrary number. Like, because it's a pass the post, if they hit that post, they earn all of the potential credit, right? And minor losses and draws are actually very hard to achieve, even in 3.0. Like, let's be honest with ourselves. How many times do you actually see true bullet-to-bone draws, right? It's not... It's like, there's so many fallbacks of, like, if this, then it's a minor... Like, this is how you win. If not, then this is a minor win. If not, then this is a minor win. If none of that, then it's a draw, right? Like, I hit a draw at NashCon. And it was like we had to play the tightest game of Warhammer ever. We ended on both completing the grand strat, both having the exact same number of battle tactics, both getting the exact number of points on an extremely varied scenario over 5 rounds, right? Like everything just completely fell into place. But I was the only one with a draw in the event, me and my opponent. Out of 5 rounds times 60 people.
Anecdotally, for what it's worth, I'm curious, Charlie, if this is your view. It does seem we have more draws than ever, but I agree that.
That's to do with the tournament software, which we can touch on later on if you want. But the way the tournament software we're using right now is set up, it's drastically increased the number of draws because the tournament software is ignoring the minor wins, minor losses, and the ways you get to those. And also, there's also a idiosyncrasy in the way that they set up the tournament software for us, where the way you calculate the differential is you take the difference in victory points between the two players, divide that by 2, and then round down. And so if you win by 1 point, that gets half the 0.5, then rounded down to 0.
Gotcha. Interesting.
So that's why you're seeing more draws.
Yeah, and I will say, like, in general, 3.0 is still, like, if you ask me, has, on the whole, has the
Yeah.
number of draws increased in 3.0? Is that a more likely outcome because scores tend to stay more even, especially if using the newer scenarios? Yes, right? Like, I think that that's true. There's a material increase, but it's a material increase on an almost infinitesimally small number, right? Like, less than 1% of all games in a tournament are still ending in draws right now.
I would say that
True draws, by the way.
if you played true draws to the way the GHB is run, then I would agree with you. Yeah, it's really, really hard to actually get draws.
Right.
The way that we've been using the tournament software, we actually end up with probably 3 or 4 per tournament with like 30 to 40 players. They're actually like more common than you expect.
Are you
But
talking
that's
about Best
again
Coast
because of the
pairings?
tournament software.
Best Coast pairings? Or...
Best Coast pairings, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep.
Gotcha.
And the way I explained it to them, they didn't end up implementing the way I asked them to do the majors and minors and round down for everything except the 1 point win. That didn't make it through the translation into the software. But actually, I'm kind of enjoying more draws as a TO. It's a lot more interesting. And
Sure.
players have generally been reasonably happy that like just a 1 point game after they've been tearing their hair out for 5 rounds.
Sure.
Like, okay, I guess that's a draw then. You know,
Yeah.
we were close enough.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
Should we cast a wider net on that kind of thing? Yeah, it's interesting. Like, what does how because the rules by how you define victory and what counts as a win ultimately determines that, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, like that's an arbitrary set of rules, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's in the pack, so the players know it. And then in my tournaments, I make sure my speech at the start says, "You need to win by 2 points because of the software. Be aware, win by 2, or don't complain."
Sure. It's kind of like isn't that a thing in like what, ping pong or something? Don't you have to win by 2, or I don't know, something
Yeah,
like
tennis, lots of racket sports. You got to win by 2 clear points.
that? Yeah.
Otherwise, you keep playing, right?
Yeah. Those are not sports I ever played, so I'm not super familiar with them, but I seem to remember that being a thing. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, ancillary items, right? Like, because then if you've stratified people in some way through the primary, and then the question becomes, as we mentioned, in these larger events, which we all hope to get back to around the world, having these large events very soon. Let's be honest. Depending on where you are in the world, they may already be happening, maybe not. But we all hope 2022 brings us many big events and sees the trajectory. We were getting there. Now, I don't ever want events to be 40K big. I'll be honest. I don't want it. Okay? I just don't. Like, I love the community growing. I'm glad to see so many people coming to tournaments and having a great time and learning that it's not all people that are jerks and just want to, like, win at all costs. That's not what tournaments are about. Tournaments are about fun. Like, it's just hanging out with your buds and having 5 incredible games of Warhammer with awesome people. I would highly encourage... I should have started with this at the beginning, but I'd highly encourage everyone to go check out a tournament. It's funny because, slight aside, Miniac, Scott, was like dyed in the wool
God.
not being a tournament player, right? Like, he's like, oh no, I don't wargame, blah, 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 blah. But then he got into A Song of Ice and Fire, and he's been real into it, and he put up a little video about, I went to my first tournament. That was a super small local tournament, but nonetheless, he had a great time, and that was the whole point. He was like, people weren't just net listing like crazy. It wasn't what I thought, right?
No.
And I think people have a bad perception of it to a large degree. All my games at tournaments, unless I'm playing Tom, are fantastic, and it's always a fun time. Tom's the only bad game I ever have. All right. So it then becomes important to break up that stratification, right? We have the general segmenting, but then how do we decide how we go forward, right? Who's actually above who in the sort? Like, as anybody who's ever worked with Excel knows, you got a primary sort, you often have a secondary sort to make sense of the data, right?
Yeah, we've divided 100 people into 5 groups. Obviously, the groups are pretty fat.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. That's that easy. So then, what are the kinds of things, Charlie, you like as the sort of secondary sort, right? As that tiebreaker items. What are the things that you found are usable, doable, reasonable? For
I
you to
like
understand?
the differential system, the 20-0 differential system, a lot as the secondary. It, like I said, it incentivizes losing players to keep playing the game. I was a big proponent of the schemes that you introduced in AOS 2 because I wanted things that losing players could do in the game. Because if I was going around my tables, I could see someone was getting pumped by a strong army, and they looked pretty sort of tired, and so standing there like, I've really got to sit here and endure 2 more hours of this. you know,
Yeah.
Sure.
and I can't do anything about it. Or they would just say, okay, you've won the game, take 20-0, let's go. You know, there wasn't a reason for them to take the points because the points didn't matter. The victory points in the game didn't matter at all if you don't have more than the opponent. So why keep playing if you're getting pumped and it's not really an interactive game?
Right.
If it's a thriller, you want to keep playing because it's thrilling. If it's not, it's, you know, human nature sort of mostly it's hard to enjoy getting thrashed by someone else. So I wanted something that my players could do in a losing position to keep them interested, invested in the game, and invested in the tournament. And that's why I used the schemes you had, and I adapted them to my system. I think the 20-year system does that as well. Not as well as the schemes used to do, because they used to have prizes for the schemes, and the schemes are generally more fun, I thought. But the 20-year system gives you points for losing, and that helps. You can say to players, look, if you score good points, you can still be top in your bracket, even if you lose, you're not going to win the tournament. It gives players stuff to do that. The other reason I like it is it incentivizes people to finish 5 turns.
Right.
Because if you don't play all 5 turns, you cannot score high points. Right?
Right.
And this will tie into my choice of the tertiary, which would be total victory points.
Okay.
You need to play all 5 games so that you can get as many victory points as you can, and also to increase your differential or recover some differential if you're in a losing position. You've got to play all the 5 turns to get all those points. Give yourself the best shot of winning your bracket, because there's probably going to be two players or more with 5 wins. You've got to make sure you're the best player, and if you're not finishing games, you're not going to be that best player. So I think that's a soft incentive to get people to finish their games in time.
Yeah. I have to say I support that. I like both that secondary and sort of tertiary. In the past, I'd always been a fan of strength of schedule, coming from sort of Magic tournaments, and strength of schedule is very common there, right? The challenge with it in this scenario is strength of schedule is often pretty opaque, right? It's often pretty complicated to calculate, especially if the software is not set up to do it. And like it's hard to understand exactly what it means to you personally, whereas the 2 items that you're talking about, right, like using 20-0 as the first differential and then using total VP as the second differential, sort of secondary and tertiary, as it were, right?
Yeah.
It gives you a clearer picture of what you're on about, like why to keep playing, as you said, the soft incentive, right? Like it's calculable, it's understandable.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's why I think I've come around over time to moving away from strength of schedule and onto something like those particular secondaries. And by the way, I think you could slot in other things in that tertiary spot other than total VPs.
Yeah.
Like I could also see just number of battle tactics completed being one, right? Or something like that. Although that's going to be based on us making a decision later on. But you could there could be choices you make like that, right, for those sort of tertiary items that are all knowable.
I've got sort of 2 points I'd like to make, if I may. On strength of schedule, I think the challenge with strength of schedule is that it looks amazing after the tournament's finished.
Right. Right.
And in the early rounds, it doesn't really mean anything.
Yep.
And so you're still going to have really weird sorts whilst you're placing matchups during the event. At the end of the event, you're going to have a whole picture of what happened, but in rounds 1, 2, 3, it really doesn't mean that much. So it's also going to struggle with the sorting.
Why doesn't it mean much?
Because
go ahead.
So yeah, Vince, you explain it, but for someone else.
Yeah, because your strength of schedule hasn't built enough, right? Like strength of schedule is based on the understanding the win-loss ratio effectively of everybody who's playing, and when you have less data, you will have a bunch of people who accidentally won games, right? Effectively, like consider round 1 or round 2. If you're just a sort of moderately decent player, you barely know what you're doing, but you know enough, and you just happen to fall into 2 basically nubs and raffle stomp them, right? Like you look like you have a strong strength of schedule. Somebody who faces you in round 3 looks like they're going up against a strong strength of schedule at that moment, but by round 5, because that person might then get boom, 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 just like knocked down 3 rounds in a row, all of a sudden their strength of schedule is going to wildly swing, right?
And like for example, with the London Open, I had 2 GITS players, and they drew each other round 1, and it was 20-0. Like that Git player who got 20 points is not gonna really have a high strength of schedule by the end of round 5. You know.
Sure.
But in round 1, he was right up there. And I
Right.
guess the 20O system has the same issues with the accuracy and strength of schedule. But the point is not that its strength of schedule is less accurate than 20O. It's that it takes time to build up the strength of schedule accuracy over time. So I don't see it as a benefit during the matchups during the event. And the disadvantage, I think, over the 20O system is psychological. And that's that players feel like they can't affect their strength of schedule, but they feel like they back themselves to get the points in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. So I've been having this discussion with Carl, one of the managers who's going to be the main organizer for our tournament next year, about strength of schedule, and it still hasn't clicked to me. He's a fan of it, and we've been having this back and forth. So yeah, no, I resonate with your last point there, Charlie.
Tell him to come back and watch
yeah.
this. The other negative I would say, and
Yeah.
it's something Final Flash said in the comment, and I do agree with it, is drops can often make strength of schedule
Oh yeah, that's big time.
be a big problem as well. Now, I will say that's less of a problem in AOS because most tournaments don't have a huge number of drops. It's not that they have none. It's just like most tournaments don't. Most AOS tournaments don't drop a great number of people for day 2. Like most AOS players are 35-year-old dads, right? And they're away for their weekend. This is what we came to do. There's no other option. There's nothing else going on. You see it a little more at like the big con tournaments because it's like, oh, well, I could drop and go play something else or do something else or experience the convention. If it's a standalone tournament, especially for AOS, I think, it's actually pretty, you get very, very limited drops in most cases, at least here in the US.
The danger is when you get a spicy matchup in round 3. 2 big players match up round 3. One of them loses, and so they don't come back day 2. And the player who won, their strength of schedule plummets.
Yep.
And they can't win now.
Yep, exactly. That's the downside. When that kind of thing does happen, it's a huge problem.
I think it's good. I use it as the 4th differentiator because then I need something super granular, but I don't think it's going to get there. But I'll talk about why I like the VPs as the 3rd one, and that's again to do with the software. When I was talking to BCP about making the software for the differential system, I was thinking really hard about how I want TOs and players to interact with the software. If it's too complex, they will not use it. It needs to be dead simple. So I decided that I wanted the players to only have to track one piece of information, the victory points they have in the game. So when they finish their game, they type in how many victory points each player has. Right?
Yep.
Just that information, nothing else.
Yep.
If someone's got 30 and the other person's got 20, the software knows which number's higher, and it can divide the numbers to make the differential, and it can record the raw score, and the players do nothing.
Yes.
You just type in your number, boom, everything's done for you. And if you do more complicated than that, and they should be tracking their battle tactics and grand strategies during the game, but that's just more points of failure down the line. I just want the players to type in one number, and it's done.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. So Vince, you made 2 points about your concerns with the 20O, the differential system as a primary. You're concerned about how it might hurt those who take more challenging lifts, mid-shell lifts, and your other point, which I'm forgetting offhand. What does that change much in relation to this as a first tiebreaker, as a first secondary?
No, I think it largely solves most of my issues when you move it into the secondary, right? Because then the world will still feel like it should when you do the primary sort, right? The beast player who goes 4-1 still comes up 6th place or whatever that happens to amount to or whatever, and gets the recognition for what they hard fought earned, right?
Yeah.
And when it's a secondary and it's just deciding sort of matchups within bands. Or whatever, or deciding sorting within bands, I suppose would be the better way to say it overall.
Yeah.
Yes, sometimes you might end up, it might end up breaking against you, but it could just as often break in your favor, right?
Yeah. Still not perfect. Still not perfect, but yeah, that
nothing
makes
is perfect.
sense.
Yeah,
exactly.
And people should experiment with other systems.
Agreed.
I've actually wrote down some questions though that. If you're thinking about making a system for your tournament, you should probably think about what is your input, what data do you have to players or you have to import into your system, and how much data do you have to import? How do you input it? Is it you or is it the players? Do you need to convert the data into something else, like tournament points? How are you going to sort it? That's the primary, secondary, tertiary. How granular are you going to get? How are you prone to errors? How many points of failure do you have?
Right.
And then how do you do this at scale? And it's the last point, which is really the killer if you're trying to scale up your event. You can have a complex, convoluted system involving historical strength of schedule, like Yes Meatballs says. But if that's good for like 8 players down your club, but if you're doing 100 players, how do you calculate that? You're going to have a really solid piece of software and have players inputting their own scores, things like that. You've got to think about that at scale, and that's a big problem.
Right. Yep. All right, the last one on this one, and I want to keep moving, was I want to talk just very quickly about battle plans. All right, so because I think this is also leads, like the battle plans we choose will often inform the scoring system. Let's be honest, right? Some battle plans.
Oh yeah.
This is a very related topic, because some, if you're using a 20-0 system, will just cause runaways, right, and be much more likely to achieve 20-0. Some are much more likely to cause 11-9s, and so on and so forth. So, Charlie, what are if you had to pick your battle plans that you think are tournament worthy out of the current GHB? What's some of your list? Like, what are you going for?
I've got a top 5 and then 3 extras.
I love it. Hit me.
First Blood.
Yep. Check.
Savage Gains.
Check.
Power Struggle.
Okay.
The Vice.
Yes.
Feral Foray.
Yes.
And then the secondary group, which Power Struggle was on the border really, is Tectonic Interference, Survival of the Fittest, and Veins of Gur. And they're the ones I'd swap in for fun, because it's not fun having the same 5 tournaments at every event you run.
Yeah.
If they're running several a year.
Sure. To be clear, power, you didn't say power in numbers, right? Or did you?
I think I said Power Struggle.
You did, but not power in numbers, right?
No.
Okay. Good.
You're allowed to stay.
Yeah.
You're allowed to stay on the show. Yeah.
No, like I think your list is literally my exact list. I don't think I would Tectonic Interference and Veins of Gur would both fall into that second tier for me, where because I think they're interesting, they're different. I actually don't mind the center action. It favors some armies and not others. It can make pieces like Gotrek really powerful when you can just kind of march around and hold 2 points really affectionately, right? Stuff like that. But there's give and take about it. The interesting thing about both of those for me, because they're, whatever, it's yada yada, right? It's the way that they create points and sort of some amount of randomness. I was playing Veins, and I had a strong middle right presence into round 2, right? Where I was like, and the objective came down on the right side, and I was like, yes, I got this one on lock. Like, right, it comes down with the right drop point. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but the player basically had the left side. There's nothing over there at the moment, right? Like, I was holding the only objective. I had strong presence, had a good like echelon right formation. Like, I was in play. I was in the zone. Now I knew the risk was going into round 3. What happens if both drop on the left side? I'm screwed. Right?
Yeah.
He's going to hold him. I'm not going to get over there with enough force to take him away, right? Before he just starts running the score up, because the nature of that one also runs the score really high. Like, later rounds are worth a lot of points. Sure enough, boom, boom, both dropped on the left, and it became uncatchable, right? Because I couldn't repivot away fast enough. And you might say, well, that's a bad choice on your part, Vince, to only cover 2 out of the 3 points and not 3 out of the 3 points. But like, I guess, sure, that player only had 1 out of the 3 areas covered, right? But they won the game. And it's like, okay, is what it is. That's why it hits the second tier for me, because sometimes it could cause weird luck flukes. But I think it's still a good scenario. Same with Tectonic.
Yeah. On average, like it's kind of like what you're saying. The way that Veins of Gur scores should even it out on the whole, but you will get those kind of games periodically. Yeah,
I find that Veins of Gur has a lot of big blowouts.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily bad, because you could, as a TO, you probably want to structure your battle plans in an order where you start off with the looser battle plans, like Veins of Gur, and then you want the really tight ones at the end for the games that are really going to matter. And then you have First Blood, which is so basic. You either put that game 3 because you think everyone's brain's going to be fried, or you put it game 4 because you think everyone's going to be hungover. You want to give them a softball for the morning.
Yeah.
But I mentioned to Rob before that it's probably worth doing someone doing a show on battle plans, because I think it's a bit of a problem. There are like 5 solid ones
Yeah.
that everyone wants to run.
Right. It's definitely true.
So
And like one of those from the mid tier, it's like you run those 5, and one of those from the mid tier swaps in.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
yeah, we need to do this. So our event. It's going to be happening probably a month before the new season. So I'm in the mindset of thinking about what can we do that's different. We're going to be at the tail end of GHB 21. Maybe take some of the prior battle plans and prior GHBs that really stood out, and do some testing, try to do some working to translate them into 3.0. And so I've started that a little bit. And so what would they look like?
What's the base one out of the core book that you just played? I'm trying to remember its number or its name.
Yeah, Rising
Power. Yeah, Rising Power is a good one in the core book. Actually, I quite like it. It's kind of an interesting. It's got an interesting shape to the objectives. So I mean, there are other options around that we tend to not think about. I mean, the problem is it doesn't have conceptions of like. It doesn't have any conception of primary objectives or whatever the heck the thing is. I can't think of the name right now. Where you can't burn them in round 3, but that's fine.
Yeah, which I really like on that one.
Sure.
I mean, I think
So
that's part of it. Yeah.
should we expect relocation orb, Tyler?
Exactly.
This has all been part of Tyler's long con to get relocation or back in the game.
Yeah.
I think that'd be fun. Yeah, I'd find that valuable because I tried like a direct port, reasonably direct port of some of the. I mean, let's take the Forcing the Hand and the Blade's Edge were the 2 new ones that we got in last season, and just trying to directly port them over. I found them less compelling, straight port in 3.0. So I'm trying to like figure out why, and I found that true with some of the other ones that were classics, focal points, like the original diagonal deployment focal points, where the west and east, if you held both 3 points, north and south held both 3 points, middle always 2. I thought that was the best, generally speaking, focal points. But anyway, it wasn't translating as well as I'd hoped to 3.0. So anyway, would find that interesting. But yeah, Rising Power is fantastic. 3 in the middle, 1 in each quadrant. In your left quadrant, 15 over, 11 up, vice versa on the other side. So you've got 5 objectives. That's good. In this edition, we've talked a lot about that. Death Stars are very much a thing. Power per square inch is very much a thing. 6 Vanguard, Archeon, whatever. And it helps with that. And the fact that you can't burn, I found that also helps as well. And yeah, it's got a little wrinkle where the one, it's like tectonic interference, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, one of the ones in the middle. Whichever one it is, it's worth 2 objectives rather than 1. But it's still the classic hold 1, hold 2, hold more.
Yeah, it's just worth 2 objectives, which is a really interesting mechanic, right? By taking the 1, it counts as 2. And which one counts as 2 is random but that's across the middle board. There's sort of a safer one each of you can grab. So it just leads to this really interesting trade back and forth. Like Rising Power was a really cool idea in the core book. And it's one that it was actually the first thing I played for 3.0, as I mentioned to you, Tyler, because I had that before I had the GHB, obviously. And it's one of those things I think could actually make in the list. Like, I think it's a super quality scenario.
Have you tried adding a purple sun to those battle plans?
Now we're talking. Yes, just start throwing in endless spells. Now I'm in. I'm back on board. Okay.
It had. I really like the layout of it. It was making good. Part of the challenge I was finding with some of those other battle plans is just trying to make good use of the smaller boards in terms of the objective layout and kind of where you're incented to play on the board. I mean, obviously, some of our missions we've just got 3 objectives, usually right in the middle, and it's less interesting, all else equal, as like a starting point. But I did find that compelling about Rising Power. It's making more use of the board in general, and with the 5 objectives. Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about awards. Oh, who doesn't love this? Let's talk awards. All right. So, Charlie, I need a piece of UK specific information. Okay?
Okay.
Because I think this is where there's a difference between the US and the UK, but I'm not sure. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe my perception's wrong. in most tournaments in the US, you have a pyramid of awards. Okay? So what I mean is you have best general, best painted, best sports. And then sitting above them, right, is best overall, which aggregates all three together. But those three don't feed each other at all. Best sports is determined solely by some kind of sports voting mechanism. Painted is determined solely by some sort of painting judge mechanism. General is determined solely by battle points, what you did in the game, whatever the previous discussion we had around scoring systems. Best overall is whoever took all three. Okay?
Yeah.
My perception of a lot of the UK scene is that they don't use that distinction. Is that a correct perception or not? Like, do you guys have that same split of the idea of a purely battle award and a big tent award, I guess? I don't know what I would call it.
I haven't been to a huge number of tournaments, or a huge number of different tournaments. I've been to like a number from the same organisers around the London area. Those tournaments have all had sports, painting, and gaming all separate, without the overall winner, or I think in 40k they call it the Renaissance Man or something.
Sure.
I haven't seen one of those at a UK tournament, the overall winner. I've only seen them sort of split or possibly combined.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I think that a lot of, to me, like I'm gonna say that I've got a strong bias here. Okay.
Yep.
And my very strong bias is that assuming your tournament is of any reasonable size, okay, like if you've gotten across the line of 40 people, I don't know, pick some number like that, right? Somewhere in that range. Then you should have a best overall, a best general, a best painted, a best sports, and a best in each alliance. Like those should be the core 8 awards that are there. And moreover, you shouldn't be able to win multiples of them. Okay? Like, I'm going to put a strong flag down here to start this discussion. Like, if you win one of those things, you don't win one of the other of those things.
So what's the rationale? Because that's also been part of the debate. Yeah, I've been looking around, and the standard is that you don't win multiple. But we've been having discussion about whether that's, whether we should do the other way. What's your case for not doing it, for not allowing multiple?
Sure. Yeah, I can defend it like this. You ready? Okay. If I go... I'll use a painting thing, but I could use this in a lot. If I go to Golden Demon, and I'm fortunate enough to put the gold entry in one of a category, right? Like, I get the gold single figure. I can't also win silver. All right? Like, that's my award. I got it. It's that one. That represents the work you did, right? That was it. Like you have the awards don't need to overlap because you're trying to recognize as many people as possible. If you have somebody who is best general and they're in death, great, they got their award. They're super happy, right? They've like it's that simple. They are like, yay, I'm best general. They don't, what a great day for them. They don't need that best death trophy. It represents like a diminishing marginal utility to them, right? But if best death has to be someone separate, right? And you hand out best death to like the person who was effectively like the best death, who wasn't that guy, who wasn't best general. That person's like, yay, I did really good, right? I'm the best death player. Like you've made it's a simple thing. It's a human factor, I guess, is my best argument. I would like to make 2 people very happy who spent a lot of money and time and showed up to this event instead of just one.
Right. Charlie, is that pretty standard how you guys
no, I think we generally have overlapping prizes, but I do actually quite like your argument, Vince, because like I said about the scoring system, 99% of people don't win, and I want to give as many options, as many incentives and as many prizes to different people as possible. Because you want to make as many people as possible happy, basically, at the end of the day. So I like that idea of one prize only. I've written it down here. Because I think, awarding more people is good. It gets people to come to the event. It's not the only reason they come, but it drives some people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if somebody can come in and just hoover up awards, right? Like, if that's a possibility, it's kind of sucky for everybody else. And moreover, I don't think it represents, like I said, there's a diminishing margin utility for the single person who's walking away with like a handful of trophies, like, I guess good on you. You know, like, what's their actual happiness level in the difference between winning best general and best death versus just best general? It's minimal.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, my general feeling is that 8 award structure represents everything the hobby is meant to be and spreads the awards as to the largest number of people possible who have displayed what do I want to say? Like, they have displayed an amount of merit that is worth recognizing, right? Like, some part of this is meant to be meritocracy, and so we have recognized a bunch of different hard work from different people, right? You kicked butt and you ended up in 6th place. It just so happens randomly that the person who took best general is also playing death like you. That sucks, right? If they had rolled the dice, if they had showed up with a different army and won, if you're like, which by the way, whenever you're in a tournament with somebody like Jack Armstrong or somebody like that, or like Bill Souza, you know, who knows what they're going to show up with? They're gonna be in the top echelon regardless, and they can just roll a d4 for alliance, right? And so they're just gonna, like, allowing them to just hoover up multiple awards is just nonsense.
Yeah.
Right. I want to spread the most happiness to the most people, make it the most worth it, and it is aspirational. Right?
Yes.
Because then it does keep more people getting back who might have been on the cut and say, hey, it's something to shoot for. I'm going to get to that thing. Right?
Yeah, we're absolutely sympathetic on this. Spreading as much joy to as many people as possible.
Right. Yeah. And so, like, to me, that's just, I feel like this is one of those things that should just become standard across the board. Like, I will, most of the things we'll discuss, I don't have a hill I want to die on. You know, like, I'm open to a lot of different takes. This is the one. This is my one. Like, this is the hill I want to die on. I think best overall, by the way, the reason it exists, you can call it Renaissance Man. I think some people had previously had issues with the term best overall. Fine. I don't care. Right? Like, what's in a name? Could be a lot, could be nothing. Super cool. Yeah. You can call it Renaissance Man. You can call it all-arounder. You can call it, you know, person who's pretty good at all 3 things. I don't care. Right?
Polymath hammer.
Sure. Yes, exactly. Like, I don't care what we call it. I think one of the reasons that award, to me, represents so much is because if you have somebody who has tried to achieve excellence in all of the different aspects of this game, and to me those are the 3 chief aspects, right? You're playing the game, you're painting the figures, and you're interacting with your opponent as a human being and as a good person to have a game, because it's a 2-way street. If somebody's really standing out with all 3 of those, that should be recognized, right? As something special. So even if you don't want to think of it as a pyramid, you can think of it as a flat system of 4. Fine, I don't care. Right?
Yeah, I have seen tournaments where someone who did really well gaming and did well with painting requirements, at least, nothing exceptional, but they met the painting requirements, but then they did terribly at sports, who you would have thought would have gotten, like, see, I've always viewed best overall in the name, getting into the hobby 6 years ago, as the awards, you know, as you said. And then over time, I viewed best general basically in that same category in my mind, but it's probably fair that it's really in some ways best overall, and then you have that second tier of painted, sports, and general, and you know, I could see that.
Look,
but anyway,
if you're getting an Oscar for best actor or best supporting actor, you're walking away with an Oscar. Okay, like, I just want to get this. Let's not worry too much about the idiosyncrasies of it. Let's just get some trophies in some people's hands and recognize excellence.
Yeah, sure. I was going to say that I think, like, 1 person, 1 trophy is probably a good idea, and I think the concept is get as many trophies as you can to different people. I think you can pretty much have whatever trophies you want as long as you spread them up and down the board, so there's stuff that everyone can go for. And that's why, I guess we'll talk about it in a bit, but that's why I put the Underdog Awards in there. Well, one of the reasons. Yeah.
No, let's. I think so. Okay, I've given my rant. I've said my piece. Let's talk about special awards, because I think this is the, like, underdog, generals within brackets, monster slayers, special things like this, 2nd and 3rd place recognition, tourney specific stuff for special things you're doing. To me, this is just as important, right? Like every tournament should have some of these things going on because this does cater to the middle of the tournament, to everybody else, to all the players, to give everybody something to play for, right? Quick story at NashCon. David had a special trophy, which was a weapon. By the way, the image behind this slide is the NashCon trophies from one year. It's all of the swords. That's what David gives away. Like full, real 440 swords. They're these right here. It's these. Okay? And so you can, like, it's pretty awesome to go up and hand you a full-size sword. It's an amazing thing. But anyways, he had one that was for Monster Slayer. Kill the most monsters. At the end of the game, you reported how many monsters you killed in that game. That's how you won that award. Kill the most monsters. Very simple thing. Okay? And the person who won was very much in the middle of overall results. Right? But they killed 20 monsters over the course of 5 games.
How many?
The nearest competitor beneath him was 12. And everybody was like, what? Like, we were mind blown. This dude went in with a mission. He was going to walk away from every table like, I will kill every monster on this table. Win or lose, I know what I'm here for, right? And that's what he played for. And he walked with a trophy. And I was like, that dude earned it. It was amazing. Like, what a great moment for that dude.
I wonder if there are games where his opponent said, I'm going to cast Metamorphosis. Are you going to unbind? Nope.
Nope. You go nuts. I would start the game by saying, I will never unbind a Metamorphosis. Please, go ahead.
Yeah.
Freebies. So yeah, I mean, like, I love stuff like this. So, at any rate, I want to throw it over to you guys now. What do you think about this kind of special stuff? Charlie, start us off, because you had, like, the underdog, that kind of thing comes from you, and your...
Yeah, I put the underdog awards in there because I wanted a reason for players to bring the lower tiered armies, or the lower win rate armies, because it's really tough going down the bottom there with some of those armies. Like, it's a real slog, and for some people they enjoy it. Like, I quite like playing Beasts of Chaos. Obviously I do like playing Beasts of Chaos because I do it all the time. I like that I have to play out of my skin, and every game is a 5-turn thriller. But for some people, they just get pretty battered with their Nighthaunt or their Gits. They put a lot of love in, and I want to encourage them to bring those armies.
Right.
And I had an ulterior motive. I figured this was the only way I'd ever get to award a gaming award to a Beasts of Chaos player, so I put it in that just for that. And guess what? No one's turned up. So I still haven't done it.
It's alright, that book's going to come eventually, Charlie. Don't worry, it'll happen.
Yeah, I've got an Alpha Beast award waiting.
There you go.
But, we had Gits players come, so I've got the biggest Git award, and we've had a couple of winners of those. The last event was quite funny, because I had 2 Gloomspike Git players turn up to fight it out for the biggest Git award, and they paired up round 1.
Just we will decide this. One shall stand, one shall fall.
Not messing around. Game 1, let's go.
Yeah. So...
And then my favourite title of the award is the Nighthaunt one, which I called the Reikenor the Windhaler.
Nice.
Yeah.
But I think they're really worthwhile putting in packs.
Yeah, and again, it's about, like, some part of a tournament is about having fun with a bunch of people, right? I mean, like, let's not lose the thread here, okay? And, there's, like, the people who are showing up to super participate hardcore, that's why they have those 8 awards. They're there, they're good. If you play hard, you win hard, you get one of those big, you can aim to the big awards. Like, merit has been rewarded, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, having these other things encourages people up and down to still play their games, to play to the best of their abilities, to have a good time, right? And to walk away feeling like that was awesome. Like, yeah, it makes that Gits player's day, right? They proved they were the best Git. Like, yeah, I showed up with Gits. I knew I wasn't going 5-0, right? That wasn't in the cards, right? But it gives them something to play for. That to me is like all the incentive I need to say that those kind of things are valuable, right? If it's making more people happy and engaged and aiming for stuff and playing hard, then it's a win.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like to me. Tyler,
as a TO, you want a diverse list of armies, right?
Right. Yeah, the worst case is everybody shows up and it's you've got these huge groupings around a few armies or a few types of armies. Yeah, it's terrible. Uh, Tyler, anything? What did we not cover there?
On the Underdog Award, Charlie, one personal tweak I might make is to have one awards and then have a list of factions that are eligible. And of course, those would be the underperformers. So just do one
That's another way to do
bucket.
it. Yeah,
I mean,
but that way I can't
just
guarantee Beasts get one if someone turns.
Sure, right. But no, I
I
love
tried to pick
the.
one from each Grand Alliance, so Sylvaneth was on there. Then they got pretty good, and now they're going down a bit. So I have to think about who can be the Order underdog. They're all pretty good right now.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Yeah, the other one I wanted to discuss, I did see in your latest pack, you have moved to best general within brackets, so that bracket system, which when I first read that, my brain was like, well, that seems a little odd, this idea of having, because again, I've always thought about best general as one of the most prestigious awards that you could get at an event. And yeah, and then, is that devaluing the idea of best general? So I was just curious to hear more about the thinking behind best general within a bracket.
I don't think so. They do it in 40k, and that's where the idea came from. Because I'm a sort of a TO who comes in and does TOing for Warhammer tournaments, which is like a events business that specialises in tournaments, and they do this for their 40k side. I think it encourages people to keep playing hard after they've taken their loss, right? If you lose a game, you cannot win best general. You're just out, right? So you're giving people reasons to keep playing, and it also feeds into the 20-0 system. It encourages you to fight hard for points because
Yeah.
you can win your bracket. Okay, I've lost
Yeah.
a game, but I'm going to win my bracket. Okay, I lost the second game. Sure, I can keep aiming to win my bracket. And like I said before, there's a soft incentive to play all 5 turns, not slow play, because
Right.
you can't win your bracket if you slow play and just squeak a win.
hmm
It's not
Yeah,
going
and
to
it
happen.
could just be, as we're discussing it, it's probably just a framing or branding issue for me, where, if you named it best in bracket, best in class, something like that, it would
I
probably
could
fit better with
change
my
that, yeah,
personal.
easily.
Yeah, my brain would appreciate that. Thank you.
And I'm pretty sure this is how Nova does it with 40k because I think they have 8 brackets that are based on that because it's a big long series of games because Nova 40k is like 600 to 800 people or something insane playing every year, and I'm pretty sure that's exactly how they do it, Charlie. Exactly what you just described. And like in the award ceremony, they're like best in bracket 8 and
One win.
7 and 6. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like and everybody gets to come up and get their award, and it's like they were all playing for something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would also be interested, I don't know to what degree you guys have chatter around participation trophy culture. We certainly have that in the United States over the years, and I do wonder if there are folks listening who feel like this conversation is getting too far in that direction. I mean, I look at a event like I mentioned, Brendan Melnick's Brew City Brawl, and Brendan's got this massive list of awards. It's very intentional though, and know, anyway, without getting into a lot of the details of that aspect of the United States culture, do you find that that's a conversation that you guys have over there about like, is there a line of going too far with too many different awards, or
I
that?
don't know about if there's a general conversation. I think
Mm,
there's points to be made about cost at this point, where I
mhm,
think possibly in the US you have a lot of big event spaces that probably aren't that expensive to hire out
mm,
because the cost of land is just lower. You've got loads more space. Hiring a space in London, firstly, it's quite difficult to find a space that can actually hold enough people, and if
yeah,
you do, it's enormously expensive. So you're going to have a lot of your budget taken up with the venue, and then you've got to
mm,
hire tables. And maybe people don't think about how much it costs to hire tables.
mm,
But people don't. Table hire companies do their business with weddings and other celebrations, style events. They don't usually work with war gamers that need specific size tables, 6x4 or smaller now. But so they make tables that are maybe half the size we need or a third the size we need. So if
mm,
you're trying to sort out, if you've got 40 players, that's 20 games, right?
mhm,
So one of the venues we're working with, their tables are 4x2. feet. So you need 3 tables for a game.
Right.
We've got 40 tables. That's 40 players. That's 20 tables. Sorry, 20 games. You need 60 tables. Like, that's a lot of tables to hire.
Yeah.
And so you can blow so much of your budget on hiring tables because you need 1.5 tables per player.
Mm.
And then you've got to pay for whatever vehicle was going to bring the tables to the venue. And that can run thousands of pounds if you scale up to large scale events. I think at the LGT we had something like 1,200 tables, I think, for that event. Yeah. I mean, they were expecting 640k players, so we had all of them turn up. Then you need 2 per table, two tables per game. That's 600 tables for that event alone. Right. So, and then you have to pay thousands of pounds to transport them. So, after all these costs, there's a point where you think, how many prizes can I actually put in here without sponsorship and companies sending products over? So you've got to start thinking, okay, if you've got budget for prizes, you've got to think about how good do I make the prizes versus how wide do I spread the prizes.
Sure.
And there's a balance to be had. And if you're trying to, some TOs take a loss, and they're happy to do that because they think it's part of their hobby. But I don't think they should do, really. And if you're trying to make a business out of running events, which I don't think is a bad thing, because you're trying to professionalize it a bit, if you can professionalize it a little bit, you can start trying to bring the standard up in some ways. If you're trying to make a business out of it, you just can't take a loss. You can't do that on multiple occasions, right?
Right.
You can have loss leader events, but you can't keep having loss leader events. You've got to make money back at some point. So I think right now we're having a big discussion about the cost of tournaments and about how that needs to probably go up so that part-time TOs can actually not take losses on themselves. And then TO businesses can sort of start trying to professionalize it and create an even healthier tournament scene. So that's the sort of the first discussion we're having right now, and I think prizes is a little bit part of that. But yeah. No,
that's good.
Yeah.
That is a distinctly UK thing, by the way. All of that, because yes, like here, not only do we have space, you can generally rent it cheaper, but it's also they're gonna facilitate everything for you, right? Like they're gonna provide all of the necessary sort of setup. Now there's a cost to it, like it's all rolled into the singular cost of the thing, right? But you don't have to the venue will generally have all the stuff you need, right?
Yeah, but I mean the problem is that if you hire a school here, they've got tables. But they don't have the number of tables you want.
Right, sure.
We were talking to the school, and they said, how many tables do you want? And we said, oh, we've got about 60 players. And they said, oh, you're great. Well, you can fit 5 people around this table here.
Right.
Said, that's not how this works.
Right. Yep. All right, let's, real quick, I think Coach brought up something interesting that I think is worth touching on here before we move on. I do want to keep moving. But to me, I'm always a yes trophy person. I want a trophy. I don't care if it's a little cheap acrylic thing. I like it. I like having the thing. I want a thing to memorialize whatever I earned. I don't necessarily need it to be a great cost, but I like the look of a nice, clean, clear acrylic trophy. Let me just say that. Or a sword. I'm also pro sword. But something looks cool. I don't want people to break the bank, but I want something that looks cool. And so Coach raised the question of what about other prizes going along with it, which, pack like kits, prize support, like here's a Dominion box, here's this, here's that, right? I don't think I have a problem with it. If you can get somebody who can donate that stuff, that's fine. I think I'd rather use those kits in a different way, we'll talk about later, than I would just give them away to people who want stuff. But I'm not opposed to it. The one thing I would never want to see is like cash prizes in AOS. Never, ever, ever in a million years. Please do not ever play it. Like, let's never play this for money, okay? Can we just not? And just because it will ruin the game faster than anything I could imagine. So, either you gentlemen have any thought on like hey, here's your trophy, but also here's a Beast of Chaos, start collecting. There you go. That kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's pretty common, certainly in the States at tournaments that I've seen. And yeah, it's usually a sponsorship. It's donated. FLGS is often getting involved, and Coach also mentioned door prizes. I know we've been talking about that a lot, just again as a way of an opportunity for anyone to win something at the tournament?
Yeah, I'm much more like those kind of kits that get donated. My honest answer is I'd rather give them away randomly through a raffle that can draw in more revenue, or just door prizes, or whatever, right? Like that way again, it's more incentive for everybody. Like, oh, you had a crap weekend, you went 1-4, you thought you had a good army, it just turned up and you got your teeth kicked in a bunch of games. But hey, here's a cool kit, and it's like, oh, neat, okay, I feel good now, right? Like. It can just again. It's just this. I like it as sort of a random either raffle or door prize or that kind of situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can work. Yeah.
So it's not that I'm opposed. It's just like you already won. I don't know. Did you need that? Did you need this thing?
They often don't want the kit anyway.
Right. Like it's just kind of an extra thing, especially when it's sort of a dictated thing. Like, oh, for Best General, we've got the Dominion box. And it's like, okay, well, I don't play Stormcast, and I don't have any intention of playing Cool Boys. Thank you for saddling me with all this extra plastic. You know what I mean? So, like, especially when they're sort of allocated that way, where like the big prize goes to the big winner. It's like, well, the big winner might not want that, right? But somebody else in that room might be thrilled about getting that thing, right? So if you have it kind of open, one of the things Steve does, I mentioned the raffle at Holy Havoc and Holy Wars. Everybody has to bring a kit. Okay, so if you donate the kit, it's worth tournament points. So you show up with a GW kit, and we all donate it into a big pool. So think like a potluck. Yeah. So everybody who's playing in that tournament shows up with a kit in hand, and we all donate those in. And then Steve also has some stuff that's donated as well. So kind of it's an enriched pot. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then he sells the raffle tickets, and you go up and you pick in order. So the first person that he draws, pick of the litter. They pick one thing. Second person, next, and so on and so forth, right? And that's a good way. That's a fun way to do it. So
yeah, I like that. I know we got to move on. One last question: your guys' views on? We didn't touch on the second or third place. That's another thing we've been considering. I don't see that a whole lot, but I see it periodically.
Should absolutely be around if the tournament's big enough. Yeah.
We tend to do second, third place in the UK, I think.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Like, again, for the same, like, most other competitions, when they award a first place, they also recognize second place, third place, runners up of some kind, right? Like,
it's just common, yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of a thing.
Does that make sense to you for a 32-player event, or is it more like a 40, 50, 64-player event?
No, in the UK, you get nearly every tournament has second or third place, and you just scale the prizes. If you have prize support, you scale the prize support.
Yeah,
yep.
Cool.
Yep. Okay. Let's keep moving. Let's talk soft scores. All right. Yep, that's right. We're going to talk about soft scores again for some reason. We already covered a little bit of this on our initial discussion, but here we go. Every couple years, I've got to have a soft score. This is like written into my Warhammer content creator contract, is that I have to talk about. I'm like sentenced to this Sisyphean task of talking about soft scores every few years. Sports. Basic checklist, something like the Facehammer code, which Tyler, I'll have you go into in a minute. Like a 1 through 5 scoring as a tiebreaker. It can be another interesting tiebreaker out there. I see a lot of people use it to determine sort of overall final ties. They'll use sports in some way. But what's your, Tyler, you want to explain the Facehammer code and kind of what that has to do?
Yeah, so a lot of tournaments that I've seen, they will have a sportsmanship checklist. So as part of your players pack, at the end of the game, you will have, say, like 5 boxes to tick off. And one will be like, did your opponent show up on time? Another one is, did your opponent display any form of cheating? And there's 5 boxes, and each box is worth a point. So that's generally become the standard way. I don't know, Charlie, about UK events or how you've done it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But that's generally become what I would say the standard way that we've done it over here. And then the painting awards will be sort of another layer on top of that. That's where you get like judging. Some like Vince will go around and judge. They didn't do that. They kind of did that in a different way, where they Facehammer oriented it explicitly around the player's code. That now we now get at the start of the General's Handbook. And it was something like 3 options. the player follow the player's code? If yes, they get 3 points. If they like sort of followed it, I may not be characterizing that correctly, but some level that was not quite 3 points, it was 2 points, and then 0 points if they basically didn't follow it. They broke the player's code. So that's the first time that I've seen that where someone has explicitly oriented basically the sports minimum requirements or sort of sports core scoring in terms of overall tournament points around the player's code explicitly. And I just wanted to have some conversation about that.
I've seen various different sports systems. Some of them more convoluted than others, or complicated than others. I tend to run a fairly simple one because, like I said at the start, I'm just trying to get my core system down, and then I can tweak it later. I tend to run a favorite opponent vote, where I just ask the players to give me one person they thought was their favorite opponent.
And you do that after round 5, right? Like basically it's one of the last things they fill in.
Yeah. Maybe as I scale, I'll find the need for more granular scoring for this kind of a thing, as a means to sort of police player behavior, possibly, because that's sort of like a soft reminder to players to follow these guidelines. At the events I've run so far, I've had no issues with sports at all, so I haven't needed that. Another system I've had is that my club, the London Wargaming Guild, they run a 40k tournament called the Fun and Fluff Tournament, which is sort of an adapted Highlander-style 40k tournament, where you bring a list that's supposed to be fluffy and fun to play against. And after each round, you rate your opponent's list on how fluffy it was, how narrative it was, and how fun it was to play against. And there are awards for those at the end. So there are all sorts of ways you can skin this cat. And
Right.
I think you don't necessarily have to make a complicated one unless you as a TO have found that you have problems that you think a system can solve. In which case, go for it. But otherwise, I think you can keep it fairly simple in some ways.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, you haven't, if I understood right, you haven't had any kind of like sports checklist. Like, did your opponent do X, Y, or Z in the game? You haven't really done anything like that, other than just.
I may have played in a tournament where that was the case. Where you tick off things. I know that some events have that, and you rate your opponent out of 5 or something for sports. But I think sometimes that can have a sort of an adverse effect where you create pressure where not scoring someone 5 is actually quite a big deal.
Yeah, so actually I want to jump in here.
That.
I hate the 1 to 5 scoring system because it becomes an Uber rating thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, the normal way that a 1 to 5 thing you would think it would work would be 3 is an average game, 5 is your best game ever, 1 is your worst game ever, whatever, something like that, right? But these all just become Uber reviews instantaneously, where it's like, if you didn't get 5 stars, it's 5 stars or nothing, right?
Yeah.
And and by the way, people who just show up to events and don't know that that's the culture will screw that up unintentionally, right? It'll be their first tournament, and they'll just be like, oh yeah, that was a good game. Okay, that was like a 3. Good game, right? And they just kind of mark the middle number. They think they just told the TO that their opponent was perfectly nice and they had a fun game and they'd happily play again, right? And it only gets worse, by the way, if then I've also seen TOs try to label the 1 through 5, where it's in like 1, worst game ever, does your opponent had several problems, and 2, it's this, and 3, it's this, and 4, it's this, and 5, it's an amazing game that blew your mind. Your incentive structure for those of you who are in the know are still, yep, every game was my best game ever, and if I was trapped on a desert island, I would want this person there and this army, and all we do for the rest of our God-given lives was play this game over and over again, right? It just doesn't make sense, and I don't think it's doing anything. I think the basic favorite opponent, right, like, is a good way to go.
Yeah.
And to me, I do like the idea of sort of a very simple basic checklist or something like it. Even a one like
because the idea is it's an objective standard.
Right, of like, were they on time? Did they play without rules violations? Like, did they display the appropriate level of grace? I mean, whatever, I don't care. You can pick 3 to 5 simple things oriented around the player code or not. They're just reminding everybody this is a 2-way street game. Both players have to be here to make it happen. We should be being fair. And where the assumption is, when it's framed like that, then everybody knows to check every box every time because there are 3 objective standards. Yep, they were on time. Yep, they brought everything they needed to play. Yes, they didn't cheat. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Like, you would expect those 3 boxes to be checked every time, and if they didn't, you as a TO would want to know, right? If somebody was violating that in a major way. And so it creates just a record of it at the time that happens for audit purposes almost more than anything else, right? It's the baseline. It's not meant to represent standout, it's meant to represent baseline.
Yeah, so then you have a separate metric for the award, I'm guessing.
Correct. Yeah, that doesn't calc in the award. Like, if you cheated, you can never win the award. It can knock you out of contention.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you're a cheater, you don't get the best sports award, period. Right? But the award is based on how many people voted you their favorite game or whatever, right? Like, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
I quite like
Well,
the
Dave-
elegance of favorite opponent.
Yep.
Absolutely. That's what Dave Griffin does with NashCon. Yeah, I'm looking at him here. He's got 4 questions that you have to tick off, and you have to achieve a minimum number over those 5 rounds to be eligible for, in this case, best overall. But yeah, Vince, they're the ones you all said.
Yep.
And then the final one, did your opponent play in a timely manner that allowed the game to finish to its natural conclusion? That is, at the end of time for the round, there was a clear win-loss or agreement was able to be reached on the outcome of the game, which, is the one that is, I find, the most notable of. I mean, the other ones are pretty straightforward. Did your opponent show up to the game on time? Did your opponent prepare for the game? Everything they need to play? And did your opponent follow the rules? Okay, did they not cheat?
Right.
And yeah, so,
Like, to
very
me, those are the
straightforward.
3 questions, right? Like, there you go. I think other things it's fine. You can set other expectations about the type of tournament you're running, but to me, it's just like that's just baseline stuff. You're just trying to make sure that everybody's. It's like one of those things that. Okay, if you prompt people, it changes behavior, right? Like, if there's been a lot of psychological research into this. Like, if you prompt people with sort of Bible verses or something like that here in the States, or sort of religious text, they'll tend, and then you ask them moral questions, they'll tend to answer more morally, right? Like, if you prompt people to act ethically, if you remind them that ethics is a thing, they will tend to then act more ethically when presented with decisions, right? So I think that there is a value to that, but it shouldn't be used to determine best sports. That just gets into a whole bad area.
Yeah.
Coach brought up a question about sports scores in relation to best overall, which kind of gets into potentially what you're mentioning, which is that, I've heard these stories over the years of people deliberately voting down someone on sports to impact their best overall, potential or viability. And I don't know if you guys have heard anything like that, or
We don't tend to have the best overall, so I haven't heard that.
okay.
Yeah, and I don't know that I've ever paid attention to it. I don't pay attention to that sort of thing. Is my honest answer. It's like, okay.
Well, Coach, if you have any, more thoughts on that, to me, it's been some anecdotal stories over the years, but I haven't seen anything like that personally.
Sure.
Yeah, for it to be meaningful, but.
All right, let's talk about the thing I care about the most. Painting. So, here. Oh, now we're in my sweet spot. I mean, this is obviously a huge incentive to me, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I also recognize that, like, at the same time, I also recognize my privilege. What I mean by that is, I don't have kids, right? I have a very stable job. Like, I have a very, very respectful and loving partner who gives me time to work, who respects my time, is what I should say. She shouldn't give it to me. She respects my time that I take in working on my hobby. That's a heck of a luxury I've got. Right? And a lot of people aren't in that position. So my ability to, like, take an army to a high level, I can spend 40 hours a week working on painting, right? Or something insane like that. Most people don't have that kind of time.
You've also got the drive to do so.
Yes. Yeah, it's 100%, yes. And, some people have the drive and not the time.
Yeah.
Right? And that's tough. And so I'm absolutely sympathetic to this. So to me, when I think about painting, I've noticed a lot of people, like, some events use these sort of checklists or that sort of thing, right? Where it's like you get a painting score and blah, 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 and all of this. And I think that's often a lot of hay for not a lot of value. Okay? Because ultimately what matters in my mind is there's going to be a best painted. It could be first or first, second, third. I don't care. Like, it can be like that, right? You can recognize excellence in painting. I like a player vote of favorite army because those are 2 separate things, Yeah? Like, an army that could win player favorite might never win best painted, and vice versa. Those are two completely separate things, right?
And
And I like them being separate. I like being able to be having someone be recognized by their peers for something cool they made, even if they're not the best painter in the world. Who cares? They did something really awesome. Recognize them, right? So to me, kind of the checklist thing is sort of like, I don't know. It just feels overdone. The way I did it, I'll explain how I paint judge events, since I paint judge many big events in the U.S., right? When I did NashCon this last year, here's what happened. I took a notebook, I went around, and I examined every army. Okay? I did one pass through the whole, and I made a note of every army that caught my eye. I sat there and sat with every army, looked at each fig while they were all displayed. And if I thought they were like a potential, right, then I would write them down. And I don't need a checklist to know that. Okay, I know what good painted is, I know what bad painted is, right? Now again, that's a luxury for David. He's got me to do this, right? But David's also a good painter himself. He could do it. He doesn't necessarily need me. That gave me a first cut, which was about 10%. I try to cut to 10% of whatever the population is, right? And then we have those people all bring up their armies, and they can like, hey, you're recognized as like, one of the cut. You're sort of a finalist. People get to display their armies in a nice little place, so it's recognition. Even if you don't end up winning one of the awards, people get your army goes in like a special place. And then I took more time with each of those and determined 1, 2, 3, like best in show style, like I'm walking along the row of dogs, right? Like, and to me that works, right? Like now, as a point of fact, often when I'm judging the best of the best, I will score things out with my own scoring system that I have. And I have a weighted scoring system I'll use, but that's for me personally, right? I could just as easily do that number free. So I think the checklist thing is like, which goes to my other thing. I think 3 color minimum is the stupidest thing you can put in a pack. I don't think it means anything. You should just say painted figures. You must bring painted models. Okay? If someone's a jerk and wants to show up with just like everything clearly just like, I slapped paint around, ha ha ha. Like, they're going to be a jerk if you say 3 color minimum. They're going to be a jerk if you say painted. It doesn't matter. There's always ways to cheat. Who cares? You're not winning anything. It doesn't matter. You knew what you were doing. Okay? It's not hard for me to take an airbrush and go 3 color minimum, no problem. Everything's blue, everything's white from slightly above, and then I shoot some red from on top. Boom! Call it the Bomb Pop Army. I'm ready to rock. Right? Like, if you want to be a jerk, you can be a jerk. You can't stop that bad actor, and who cares? Right? Who cares? They were never in contention to win anything. What are we doing? I want painted armies. Right? So it should just be an assumed minimum. Show up with a painted army where the models look like painted models. If you don't know what this means, contact me. But don't be stupid. Like, I have a lot of opinions on this. I guess.
Yeah, the painting rubric and trying to put together a pack, it's not, I've been having that debate. Like, do we need a painting rubric? And in general, my sense has been no. It just, like you said, it's a lot of hot air.
How much more work do you want as a TO?
Right.
Exactly right.
It's an insane amount of work, right? Like, Adepticon for years used this very complicated painting checklist. And they had to have an army of volunteers walking around to score 200 armies when it's like most people just end up at 20. Or some number around there, right? It's like, geez, what's the payout here? Right?
Yeah.
What's the cost benefit? Just doesn't make any sense to me. All right. And by the way, Aethercast, hey Aethercast, what's up, buddy? Over here is saying, I always thought it was a shame not to have other hobby-related awards, best conversion, best spacing, best display board, stuff like that. Which Holy Havoc, this tournament I'm going to, is a largely narrative and hobby-focused tournament. They have like 4 different hobby awards they give out. I love hobby awards. I love recognizing people who do other cool stuff. So yes, I'm okay with that as well. I think that would fit into the special category above that we mentioned. Like, a lot of when we were talking awards, a lot of them we focused on were more gaming related. But I think you could have ancillary hobby related awards just as easily.
Yeah, I love to have some of that, but there's only so much bandwidth I have.
Sure.
Yeah.
All fair. All fair.
So some tournaments I've seen, they have what you described, Vince, as just like this standard that you have to achieve to keep your toys on the table and to play the event. And then they'll have bonus points that are available that go toward an overall score that could potentially help with your, best overall or whatever score. Just help like your overall tournament points. And then of course they have the best painted favorite choice. What do you guys think about that of like available bonus points for those who bring armies that could go toward a best overall? Is that ideal?
Yeah, if there's the concept of best overall, it's exactly how it should work. That points is what factors into that thing, right? It shouldn't ever factor into best general. That's two completely separate things, right? When those two get mixed up, it's a bad day. You get people leapfrogging in weird ways that doesn't make sense. General's meant to test skill against skill, right? Like, that's what it's there for. Don't stay in your lane, painting.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. It should just I don't think it's that complicated. Is my honest answer, right? And I'm not minimizing what you're saying. I just mean go ahead, Charlie.
I've only used that in the Dress General in one way, which was for my local club. We ran a poll for what we should do for some one-day events we did. Should we allow people with unpainted armies to play in a small one-day events? And if yes, should they get any penalty or not for running unpainted? And they had choices of I don't care at all. People can do what they want. To everyone must be totally painted. To somewhere in the middle. And the majority of our members said, yeah, unpainted is fine, but some sort of penalty. And then we switched that in our pack to a bonus for being painted because it's better to incentivize than punish.
100% with
So
you. Yep.
we were running a 20-0 system, and we were running 3 to 4 games, so you can get as an AOS2. And we gave 5 points, 5 tournament points if your army was fully painted. Not enough to upset everything, but a little boost.
Sure.
And then we also put 5 points, 5 points if you name your general, as like a read the pack reward.
Awesome.
Nice.
I love it. And yeah, to me, it's like in that kind of thing, especially with one-dayers, I'm all for it. Like, you should kind of blow open the doors on one-dayers in general, right? Like, with the one-day thing, that's where you want to bring people in. So, this is when I talk about, like, show up with painted stuff, that's for, like, a GT, right? Like, one-dayers need to be an on-ramp that's welcoming to new people in the hobby and stuff like that. So, it just makes sense to say, sure, if it's not painted, that's fine. And by the way, Charlie, you and I are, again, simpatico. Like, never penalize when you can incentivize, right?
Yeah.
Just make it a positive utility instead of a negative utility. It's pretty straightforward. Yeah. Okay.
And this one goes without saying with the painting, but just to say it, like obviously anybody that's playing a commission army and or borrowing an army, should not be eligible for best painted or any of that stuff.
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it should be known by now in the community, but I still do see people who don't follow that rule, which is very weird.
I do not understand why. I don't get it. What do you think you're holding if you commissioned an army and you're holding a best painted award? You're holding a lie. Like, I don't. What potential benefit do you get out of being such a weird person? Like, if that's you and I find out, like, it's a simple answer. Please don't come back to our events. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
So yeah, it's just like. By the way, at a GT, I could see allowing unpainted, even at a GT level, I could see allowing unpainted stuff or something like that. But if you fail, if you cheat, or if you show up with unpainted figures, you get bracketed out of losing the top awards. I could see that as like a structure, right? Like, so as also an incentive, like you cannot win these awards if you show up with unpainted or crap or cheat or whatever. Like you will just, it becomes a hard gate. So, anyways.
Yeah, I once spotted a couple unpainted, like sort of 4 unpainted models in an army. I looked at the player and the eyes were totally bloodshot, paint on their fingers. Just get it done for tomorrow. Just
yeah.
Right.
Demonic Teddy said, "Send the trophy to the commission painter." Absolutely. If I ever found out, I'd be like, "Give me that back. It's going to someone else who painted this. They get it. You didn't get this." Okay. Cool. Let's talk about round timing. This should be a fun one because we've had some people already mention this. So let's talk about round timing, or time to play the round, or I don't know, whatever you want to call this. How long should a round be? Chess clocks. how does the round start? Do you set expectations for like a sample round breakdown? What happens when you call it early? Are players allowed to talk through their games? You know, like do you get the points for rounds unplayed, such as battle tactics, all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna say one thing real quick here, and then I want to hand it over to everybody else. And Tackaloy, it's going to be the exact opposite. Chess clock should never be part of this game ever, 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 ever. I hate them. I hate the idea of them. They like great. Hey, I love it when Sons just win out of hand too. Why not make it easier for Sons of Behemoth and Iron Jaws to win? You know, it's a very weird incentive structure for very simple armies. It punishes things like Gits and Beasts for no reason whatsoever. It just creates a bad incentive structure because some armies are simply slower because the way the game is designed. In chess clocks work because both people are playing with the same amount of things and the same pieces that do the same thing and the same number of them. This game is not designed with that expectation around it, and trying to fit it on there just doesn't work. People should play at a time, but like a chess clock just puts very unnecessary pressure on people who, by the way, you want to make tournaments really... you want to make sure that nobody new ever comes to tournaments and we don't grow the tournament scene. Bring chess clocks in. It's a great way to do it. Because then everybody who thinks that tournaments are just whack people trying to win and taking everything way too seriously, well, you just proved them all right. Like, I understand that there is a cohort of people, namely, like, Final Flash and Tackaloy, apparently, who want chess clocks. But that's, and like, I get it. I hope somebody does a tournament specifically for you. Like, I would love to see a tournament that's like, this is the super hardcore grinder event. It's chess clocked. It's everything. Only show up if you mean it, right? Like, cool. Like, if that's your tournament speed, I hope a TO wants to run that. But like, as a general rule, no, get that out of here, right? It doesn't belong in there. Like, the scene doesn't grow with that kind of thing. It's unnecessary pressure on an already extremely high pressure game with a lot to remember, etc. Right? So there you go. That's my general feeling on that piece. That's the only piece I have a strong opinion on here, and it's real strong.
So a lot of thoughts on this, but Charlie, let me give the floor to you. Would you have any view
I
on chess
don't really agree
clocks?
with you, Vince. I think they're quite intimidating for new players. And like you said, there's sort of like a different amount of time involved with each army. But Takalor is one of my assistant TOs for my club, so we're going to have an interesting chat later on.
That's funny. All right, so let's talk about let's move through this round timing. How long should the rounds be in AOS 3.0?
Go ahead, Tyler.
Leaning toward, so this is one of the debates right now. It's 2:45 or it's 3 hours. Now, by the time that we get to May of next year, I think we may be at a 2-hour 45. As we stand right now, if I were doing a tournament this weekend, 2-day, 200 player, like Charlie's doing next month, I would be doing 3 hours. For multiple reasons, that's 30 more minutes than what was the standard for a long time in Warhammer Fantasy, certainly in AOS. In my experience getting back in the hobby 6 years ago, we generally, most of my turns I've been 2:30. 2:30 is not enough time with 3.0. The way the game plays, there's more interactivity in every turn, which is cool. Yeah, 3 hours to me is the new standard.
Yeah, I think it's got to be 3 hours right now. We are encouraging players to play all 5 rounds because of the scoring system we've introduced. The scoring matters. It's quite hard to figure out scores for people that drop out, that concede the game. So they're going to go to all 5 rounds. So yeah, I think it's got to be 3 hours. The game is just slower. It's just slower right now. So you need the 3 hours. But I am in favor of talking things through, and I want the talk through to happen in the round time. That's what I told players the last event, I've given you 3 hours. It's more than other events, but I want the talk through in the round time.
We'll get into it. I have some concerns with the talk through.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
we can get into that.
sure. So let me I want to actually talk about the talk through from both sides. Okay?
Yeah.
Because I also like 3-hour rounds right now. I actually like them in general. And I think it's fine. Like, I think shaving 15 minutes off or 30 minutes off or stuff is just too hopeful, and it puts people under undue stress and stuff like that. This isn't meant to be a stressful thing. I agree with you completely, Charlie, that we want people to finish their games. If you have 3-hour rounds, you get a lot less talk-throughs. That's number one.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Number two, I actually want to normalize players talking more at the beginning of the game
Right.
as well. All right,
Mm.
where people allow for a little discussion back and forth of like, hey, this is my name, this is my army, here you go, here's my list. You got any questions about how anything works? Happy to explain. Like, have you played this army before? Is this your first tournament? Like, there's a lot of little discussion that can take 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning of a game that if you allow for it, maybe as people are setting up, you can be doing it as you're putting models on the table or something, right? And like that beginning discussion can be so valuable. Like it can set expectations. You mentioned like Bill Souza, Tyler, right? I think this was Bill who said he likes to have this sort of initial discussion of like, hey, just so you know, if you make a little mistake and you catch it in the round, I don't have a problem with you taking it back, right? Like if we're still in the same phase or whatever, you're like, oh, I forgot to do this thing. Can I do this thing? Yeah, sure, of course. This is a friendly game. We're gonna play a good game of Warhammer here, that kind of thing, right? And I think allowing for the 3-hour round lets people have that discussion at the beginning, which I think is hugely valuable for expectation setting. I'd like to know that it's somebody's first tournament game, I'm playing against them, or whatever, or that kind of thing. I'd like to let people know that, like, I'm going to play a cool game with you, this is fine, it's not the end of the world, this isn't the freaking World Series over here, or whatever.
Yeah, and you need to build in time for people to go to the loo, buy drinks, have chats, things like that. That's got to be, because they want to do that anyway. I've run 1,000 point events where we played 4 90-minute rounds. It's tough. They've got to play fast. And you can see the bar doesn't take much money, and they're not that happy. So you've got to have some time for people to do things that people have to do.
Mm.
Yeah. So to me, it allows for like going to the 3-hour round, which by the way does not create that much of a delta in when the whole thing's ending, right? It just allows for more people to finish their games, people to be more comfortable, to have the discussions at the beginning, and to minimize the talk through at the end, right?
Yeah.
And to me, the talk through at the end is sometimes necessary, and sometimes it's obvious. Sure, there's always going to be weird situations. Like, it has to be a thing where both... I don't have a problem with the talk through as long as both people completely agree to it. And I like your point, Charlie, of like doing it within the allotted time, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't play to the minute, whatever. If it's 1 round left and this person has 1 fig on the board and I've got 5 units on the board and I haven't used run 3 yet, right? I'm going to go, this will be my battle tactic next round. Do you agree there's no way you could stop it? Yes. Okay, cool. I'll have those 2 points next round. You're going to sit there. I'm not going to kill that unit. You'll have this thing. Da-da-da-da-da. That'll be the end score. Does that make sense to you? Yes. Like, most games where I've had to do a talk through are pretty logical. And if we didn't, if we couldn't agree, we're just like, okay, well then we call it where we are.
Yeah.
Right? That's it.
Yeah. And the key is that with the 20-0 system, you're competing against other players' points. So you're not going to have a system where you just both give each other max points, because it doesn't work with a 20-0 system. You're points your opponent gains and points that you don't gain. Right? So there's a problem before where if you run a pure victory point system, then you can just talk through the game. Okay, we both score max points, therefore we both do really well.
Right.
That can't happen with the 20-0 system. So the talk through has to be negotiated, and both players agree on it because it's competitive.
Yeah, and I think that one of the problems is, like, Tyler, I know you've had some questions about the talk through, and I get it. There are pitfalls here, right? There are. But I think the problem is you also can't stop it. You know what I mean? Like, it is also part of the culture. Like, people will... It's the end of round 4. You've got 10 minutes left. You're like, look, we don't have time to play another round, but I think we both know where this is going. How do you feel? What do you think is going to happen? Blah, blah, blah. Like, it just happens. You can say don't talk through your games. People still talk through their games. Right? Because
I have mixed feelings. Right. I mean, I definitely agree with the culture, and this is more of a recent development. We've been having some recent discussion in our local community about this. Part of it is related to concerns over personal experience we've been having, going to tournaments and seeing a lot of players not finishing their games. In general, getting the feeling that quite a few AOS 3.0 tournaments so far have had quite a few people not getting past, say, round 3 even, but generally round 3 and round 4, not getting into round 5. Real quickly, Charlie, what was your experience with your event so far? Were you having a meaningful number of games not getting to...
Found that there were a number of games in my first London Open that were stuck at sort of round 3 or round 4, and it was going over time, and they were submitting the results too late. So I kind of honed in on that a bit in the next one, and a big speech at the start, like, you need to finish your games within the 3 hours. I need a result at 3 hours within the 5 minutes afterwards. Otherwise, you risk being scored double loss, because I need to move on with the event. If you need to talk through, you can talk through, but you need to do that inside the round time. I'm not playing dice down, I'm playing scores in. And it's up to you guys to figure that out between yourselves. And the other point is that on my event, I'm using BCP, and the players self-score. They enter their own results in, which makes it a lot easier for me. But they've got to negotiate that.
Yeah, so one potential concern that we've been discussing is potential for, I've got the word collusion in my head, I don't know if that's exactly the right word, but you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And then also, like, you know, I do have, I've always been, I mean, personally, as Vince knows, I'm a very analytical player who's always trying to make optimal decision. I see a lot of Richie in myself when I watch Richie play from Just Play. Sorry, Richie, where, you know, he's also very analytical. And point being that I didn't really have a problem with 1.0 and 2.0 in games getting finished. I have had a problem in 3.0, where I've been almost every loss that I've had in 3.0 tournaments mostly have just been because I didn't get my games done, whereas it probably would have turned around. I've had experiences where my opponent wasn't comfortable, you know, like, it looks very obvious to me that I'm going to get the game, but I was the one who didn't get us to round 5, make the game very clear, and he wasn't willing. So it ended up being a draw or a loss. But anyway, yeah, we've been discussing these issues quite a bit recently. Yeah. So what about on the one on collusion? What do you guys?
I realised I didn't quite answer your last question either. In the second London Open, after I gave the talk, I found that every game finished, except a couple every round. There'd be sort of a handful that were in the middle of round 5 when the time happened, and they went a few minutes over, just finishing that 5th round off. But otherwise, the second tournament, I had everyone finishing more or less in time.
In 3 hours.
Yeah, and because they're being used to the system now, they knew they had to get through to the end to get the points. And because the system is competitive, if I get points, you don't. If you get points, I don't. You can't really collude on the points because it's a zero-sum game, you know.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the combination of allowing for the longer round and setting and prompting people, right? Like prompting people with the expectation that you should be finishing your games. Again, the same reason you prompt people for sports, you prompt people in this. People will tend to act in the way you prompt them to act. Like, humans are sort of social animals like that, right? And so, you know, I think when you get into those two things, you just minimize it. This feels like the kind of thing that you can't attack directly. Like, attempting to regulate it will fail. We have to attack it through ancillary ways to lighten the load of the problem, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and you can tell players at the start, if you do not finish your games, you will not score highly.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Tackalo in the comments. Train of thought, if you're being analytical and taking more time, not finishing the game, you're sort of punishing the player taking less time. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the obvious thing. And in my personal experience, it's actually been the exact opposite. It's been almost every game that I've lost at a tournament has been a form of self-sabotage because we didn't get to either rounds 4 or rounds 5 when the game, not just ego talking, like the game probably would have turned my opponents. The game would have turned around. So they actually were benefiting. Me taking up too much time and then them getting the win or getting the draw because we couldn't, we didn't get through all the rounds. But yeah, I mean, all is equal. And I do feel like though I have been seeing at the tournaments I've gone to, which not many would like it in 3.0, more issues with time than I ever had before. And especially with new players. Like, I played some new players in 3.0 and oh my God, like, it's been a real problem. One game I had to say something to somebody because he was going so slow and with what he was trying to do.
Yeah.
Yes. So some of this relates to the whole, we've been having discussion this week about chess clocks and all of that. And I know Vince, you clearly have a very strong opinion on it.
Mm-hmm.
I've never really
Kill it
tried
with fire.
it.
Yes,
So,
correct.
what's that?
I said kill it with fire.
Yeah, with fire, yeah. I've never tried it, so I'm open-minded and curious about certainly a common perspective that if you introduce chess clocks, it's going to have these ancillary consequences. It's going to change culture. It's going to have these negative externalities, like it's going to be associated with it. And I don't know if that's true. Like, I don't know. I haven't tried it. I haven't seen tournaments try it. I have a lot of 40K players. I know we all, like many people, like to bash on the 40K culture and all of that. I'm good friends with a lot of 40K players. They love their tournaments. They don't see, like, when you talk to 40K players, that when I talk to 40K players, for the most part, they are not expressing this narrative that I hear of 40K community and culture and players, and the way that they talk about why they like chess clocks and what chess clocks has done for their environment, where they were having issues with time, and chess clocks really cleaned it up. But would we experience a major cultural change
You're
with
saying
chess
the
clocks?
40K tournament-based culture is what you're aiming for?
So I'm saying I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. Haven't tried it. You haven't tried it. I
Correct.
don't know of tournaments that have tried it.
Sure.
You're assuming that if Charlie runs, if we run an AOS tournament a month, at whatever, and we do it, that it's going to have all of these negative effects. I don't know if that's true. There's ways that you can account for it.
Well,
I don't know. Personally, where
so
I'm
let
at
me
right
say,
now,
hold on, let me jump in there real quick. I understand the experiment you're talking about, right? Like you're saying, I would want to see it in practice before I judge. I think the challenge with that is you are definitely going to hit more negatives than positives with more people upon initial uptake. Okay? Like, because it is simply because change is a thing and change management is a thing. And we've done nothing to help people with the change management there other than saying we're doing clocks now. Okay? So, almost by nature, it's going to create negative externalities right away, like instantaneously. What you would actually need to do is have it for some amount of time where it did become normalized, right? And where people did get used to it, because that's when you might express the positives. Yeah? Like, once it is, because, like, what happens if you're using, like, a true clock? What happens if you're letting it run, whatever? I'm not saying it has to be, like, the physical slappy clock from chess. You're using something like that, right? And then you forget, because it's both new to you, and you forget, and it keeps running, and it's in your opponent's turn, and you're like, crap, it's the 10 minutes I got 10 minutes off my time, and it's your turn, right? Because those things will happen left and right at the beginning, right? And like, those mistakes will happen left and right, which will just create negative externalities at the beginning. When it's normalized, you won't have as many people make those kind of mistakes because they expect it. People who go to chess tournaments with clocks don't make those kinds of mistakes because it's part of how they play the game, right? I would also point out that like, separate discussion. The best chess player in the world and the best chess player in the world are two different people. Okay? Because it is a very different skill set to be able to play chess very, very fast, right? And to be able to play chess sort of normal, as it were, I guess. Whatever. So my point is that, like, no, I'm not saying I think it would be the end of the world. Okay? And I do think you could express positives. The challenge is you'd have to normalize it within some group for quite a while to get it to be normalized and to express all the positives. And there are positives, right? But there's also, like, and there's a set of people who are in the comments who are like, they love it, man. They're in. Like, they're in for it because they like how it makes them aware of their time.
Yeah, like, I feel, doing the thought experiment in my head, I feel like that's what it would just do to me, and I welcome that. Like, I'm hyper aware that I can suffer from analysis paralysis and have been trying to get better, especially in 3.0, to stop having tournament games that I lose because I don't finish them in time. Like, I'm tired of doing it. Almost every single damn game has been lost because of me, because of that. So anyway, I'm curious about whether that would help. And like I said, the stories that I've been hearing from 40K community has been largely positive. I get there are some critiques although, when we talk about them, we don't play 40K. We're not a part of that tournament scene. We have our stories. I'm not sure how often they actually map over to reality. I tend to like a lot of the 40K guys who play tournaments, and like they seem generally like pretty, guys and gals. They seem anyway. Without going down that road, but yeah, we haven't ran the experiment. I'm curious. I don't know of any AOS tournaments. I hear like a huge amount of resistance in the AOS community to even thinking about the idea of chess clocks. But
Which is sort of a prima facie statement, right?
But I don't find that it's often that what I would consider informed or based on personal experience, based on actual experience. To me, it's a lot of stories in people's heads.
Sure.
They're telling themselves.
Sure.
Charlie, are you enjoying
I'll
this?
grant that.
Do you have any thoughts on this, Charlie?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the middle of you guys here, where I see where both of you are coming from. Because I also work with some 40K guys, and they're pretty used to it now. It's just in the events that the Warhammer tournaments who I work with run, they run 40K events. Chess clocks are standard for every player, and they're used to it now. But you do have some players get wins because they've timed out their opponent, which doesn't seem quite right to me in some ways. I understand why it happens because they just use up too much time, but it also doesn't seem like a satisfying conclusion to a game. But that's going to start happening. And I don't like it as a barrier to entry, and I don't know, there's sort of a weird feeling about it, which I think is where some of the community is at. But I would be interested in having an experiment and seeing how it goes as well. On the other hand, to be selfish, I don't want the hassle of organising it. It's a lot of work to get it up and running. And we'll see. And right now, the tournaments are almost there, I think, for timing.
Yeah, I don't feel like we have that bit of a problem that we need to introduce this powerful antibiotic, right? Like this is a heck of a drug you've just tried to introduce into the system when I'm not sure that there's that much of a disease, right?
Oh, I certainly agree with that. Like 3 hours, everybody, all else equal, should be getting their games in 3 hours periods. Like absolutely.
And sometimes it just doesn't happen. Like we can say it's not me, not my army, but it happens to everybody sometimes. And I think what I try to do is litter my pack with little small incentives to get games done, and it seems to be working. And I'll see how it goes.
I would also point out one other potential challenge. I would want to know when the clock is exactly switching back and forth. Okay? Because especially in 3.0, there's a lot of back and forth activity. So, like, is it taking off my time when I do any kind of reaction to you? Right? So every time I have to roll a save, every time I have to, like, every time, if I redeploy, if I unleash hell, if I whatever, right? Like, there's a lot of potential interactions of dice. The
movement phase could be a nightmare.
Like how much is going back and forth?
I move my unit, redeploy, hit the clock. Yeah. And they've got that's their thinking time. Do they want to redeploy? Then they've got to hit the clock back to say, no, I don't want to redeploy. Okay, now I move the next unit. Redeploy? No. Yeah. Okay, move. Redeploy? No. Like that could get kind of crazy.
That seems fair.
Like, and that's when, by the way, like if so, which leads to my concern. And again, I know there's people who want this. They're in the chat. They're all very vocal, and that's fine. I love you guys. I'm glad you all enjoy this. Like I said, I hope somebody does run a tournament like this. But my challenge is there's a lot of back and forth, and I don't think I'm being overtly granular. I think that this is simply like, if I have to pass it to you because now you need to make saves, and you've got to reroll saves, and you've got wards, right? Cool, I'll pass it to you, and then it comes back to me. That's a lot of chances for error, right? And again, it's going to iniquitously punish certain armies. These are not equal forces. Some armies do just take longer to run, period. Like, significantly. Through choices that's not of that player's control. Like, suck it, Lumineth players. You get to lose, I guess, a lot more games. I guess it would bring down the Lumineth win percentage. So, hey, there's a positive. But like the Lumineth player didn't decide to design their book like that, right? With like where they have counter spells and interrupts everywhere, where they would need to take control of the clock, right?
Well, Well, I appreciate the discussion on this, yeah, because it's definitely one we've been having locally. Maybe one other issue, Charlie, how have you been handling concessions? Maybe we talked about it when a player concedes in terms of scoring. So like say we're in round three, and I'm fed up because you've been destroying me with 50 sentinels, and we don't get through round four and five. What happens?
I think I'm not sure if I've written this up yet or not. I think I need to write up a protocol for this,
Mm.
which would be something along the lines of the player who concedes scores no more points from then on, and the player who well, maybe they score 0, and then the other player will then play on and get they'll score as many points as they can feasibly
Mhm.
in the remaining time, something like
Mhm.
that. I need to sort of work out a metric for that, but I found that there have been very few concessions because players say, "Look, man, you've won the game, but we'll just talk through the last turn so you get the points you need."
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's as aligned with my experience as well. But yeah, but I've seen some variation in terms of how tournament packs handled that. And yeah, I'm just curious your view on it. Vince, do you have any thoughts on that one?
No, I like Charlie's solution. I think that's right. I think it's exactly right. Yeah, like it makes sense. Like if somebody concedes and it's pretty obvious that you're going to be able to go through and do like X and Y and Z, sure. Like as a conceding player, I'd be like, I would actually just tell people, look, we can call it. It's obvious to me. You're going to get this. You're going to do this. Good. You know,
Right.
like again, I think some part of this has to be the culture of being gracious players,
Yeah,
right?
Mhm.
Like that does need to still always be part of this.
and that comes down to that first point about people make great tournaments
Right.
because they can also ruin it too, you know.
Sure.
But most of the time, the people are really good and they play for the right reasons and the right intention, and everyone it's a negotiation. The game's a negotiation, and it goes well.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Cool.
Good discussion. That was good. Okay. All right.
Folks, I don't disagree with him at all times.
No, no. Some people.
Push back on it.
Yeah, somebody said in the comments you agree with me too much, but that was a good pushback. All right. Okay. Let's talk scenery, gentlemen. We talked about terrain in previous things. Charlie, how do you think about terrain? Like, Tyler and I have had long discussions about this already. What do you see as the big challenges? I've got this picture here, by the way. This came from Warhammer World, right? This came from.
Yeah, Steve Wren,
Yes.
who's heading up organizing for Warmer World events. Yeah, he put together these awesome images, maps
Of
with,
like
different
impassable,
terrain.
impassable in cover and wildwoods and stuff like that. Which, by the way, Steve Wren is an absolute hero.
Yes.
He is the man. He is my absolute hobby hero. The man is he's great, great dude, great person, great guy. So at any rate, I love this. He has a whole bunch of these like little pictures and packs, kind of defining everything for this cool terrain he's made for tables, which is fantastic.
Mhm.
Charlie, what do you think about scenery? What are the outstanding challenges with terrain and stuff?
I think it's pretty important. The challenge of the terrain is you've got to make a system that affects the game in a positive way without getting in the player's way. That's the main thing. The system's got to be smooth so that players interact with it naturally and fluidly, but it doesn't have zero impact at all. It's got to influence the decisions players make, but not take over the game, not get in the way, not cause weird interactions, but direct them to move certain ways. So when I was playing my pack with Daniil, one of my assistants, he was sort of we sort of got a table out and put down objective markers in all the spots they could possibly be, and then we started placing down pieces of terrain and to try to see like what kind of flow would this board have. Kind of similar to the chat you and Rob had, Vince, about if you make terrain here on this map, it creates this kind of flow. And we sort of put the pieces down and tried to sort of think we were trying to make a universal plan actually, so that we didn't have to reset tables every round, and the players didn't have to reset tables. So we were trying to find setups with the pieces we had where we, like any scenario you put at it, there'd be some nice flows that weren't too obvious, not big firing lines. Garrisons wouldn't be in really overly influential places. We weren't accidentally blocking more crushers from moving anywhere at all, things like that.
Sure.
And yeah, like Daniil brought out a more crusher plate, and every time he made a board, he just put the plate in every spot. It's like, okay, that fits. And you mentioned verticality as well, like try to cut that down as much as possible. It makes a very interesting game in games that are granular like Warcry, but it's just a pain in Age of Sigmar most of the time, and it lets people do pretty janky things where you can't be charged, or you have to assume that models are high up but they're actually on the bottom because you can't fit them.
Right.
So, and also if you can put things on top, then you sort of ruin a lot of the flow you're trying to influence.
Right.
If you make things impassable and obscuring, then you're directing players, okay, you need to interact with the scenery in this way.
Yep.
And the pictures are really good. We did pictures for the training pieces we have, because we want players to just look at it at a glance. I understand what this does. I can move on with the game.
Yep.
The big challenge I had with my first tournament, my first London Open, was that players weren't sure how to interact with the scenery because I hadn't directed them. And then I told the players that asked me what to do, and the players that didn't ask me played it totally differently. And so I had sort of some players playing it as I wanted it, with impassable pieces, and other players with Morathi on top of huge stacks of huge mountains that couldn't be touched.
Right.
I thought this is not good. I need to make this clear and obvious.
Yeah, I mean, we've said it before. I'll say it again. Impassable was the trick that was missed in the base terrain rules, amongst a few other things, like calling obscuring terrain wild woods. But sure, whatever. They had the right idea, wrong name. I won't bust them up too bad for that. I love that Steve decided, no, we're just gonna go ahead and use impassable. Like GW opened the door when they started slapping impassable around on faction terrain, so now it's just a thing, right? We could just bring it in all we need to. And I agree. Like, to me, the verticality challenge just gets painfully annoying, and the solution is just like, okay, what we're gonna do here is things that have a lot of verticality are either impassable or garrisonable, which effectively makes them impassable because you can't land on them, right, unless you're garrisoning them.
Yeah, exactly.
So they just become those two things. The more flatter things that it's not, it doesn't really matter, right? Like, yes, the verticality is like this, in size, and it's like, okay, fine, the thing is it's sitting there, but it's maybe sitting like this. No problem. Any other model can still walk up to it. Maybe the base is a little wobbly, as it were, but it's sitting, right? I can take my hands away from it. It sits in the space. It's not. I don't need to make a dice tower to hold up one side, or do something magical. It just boom, there it is, right? I think once you make simple fixes like that, you really. And then when you have garrisons, by the way, I mean, garrisons represent their own challenge, and they're fairly complex, and people don't really know the rules. And they definitely need to stay very far away from objectives. Like, they should not be within 6 inches of an objective, which can be challenging. So, like, garrisons to me are like a fine enough thing. If almost like in the pack, you just had written the rules for garrisoning on like the last page, because
they were a challenge.
People just don't remember those rules. It's complicated. It's weird. The interaction between moving in, moving out, what's allowed, what's not, blah blah blah. How many?
I had to tell a few players during the event, you can't be there. That's a garrison. You can't be on that.
Right.
And then one top player, experienced player, said, "Well, you've made up loads of rules for this pack." I thought, nope, these are all in the core rules. This is what garrisons are.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a challenge, right? So
I think keeping garrisons away from objectives is important too.
Yeah. You just don't want to let somebody be able to be like, this corner of the pyramid is within 6 inches of the objective, and I put 30 dudes in there, so now I've got 30 people on the objective, and it's like, okay, sure, sure.
Yeah.
Seems reasonable.
Yeah, I'm excited to see there's more pickup. The Just Play event that's happening this weekend, I was looking at that pack today. Richie and company are doing. Miniatures must be able to be placed on the table at all times. Heavy use of the impassable terrain rules will support the easy implementation of this. So yeah, it's catching on, Charlie.
Yeah, awesome.
Nice. I love it.
Took a lot of work. I'm glad people are liking it.
Fantastic. I think this is one we're all in agreement on, and we've all touched on it before, but it was worth restating the core principles here. So
definitely.
Okay, cool. Let's keep moving. Nothing too crazy about this one. Let's go to the last one. The special sauce. Oh, yeah. All right, so the special sauce. I like, as you said, Tyler, I too am attracted to tournaments that have some kind of special sauce about them, right? these are all bonus options. This is just meant to be kind of a basic list, but you could do. There's 100 other things that could be on this list. There's absolutely no reason why I have a picture of a Lumineth guy next to the line that says TO comp. By the way, that's total. That's complete happenstance. No grand strats or battle tactics outside of those in the GHB. I've made my case before on this in previous shows. We should just all adopt this rule. And like, I want to put a gun to the head of GW and say, release 25 versions of these or 0. That's the correct number. Those are the only two numbers. Okay? 6 or 5 or 8 is not a correct number. It's stupid. Get rid of them. Grand strats, battle tactics outside of the GHB just shouldn't be used until everybody has them. The appropriate number is all or none.
It came up last night. I could have gotten my 5th battle tactic last night, but I would have had to pull from the store. Like, nope, I'm good.
Yeah.
Had to pull from the store. It just felt like cheating. Like, why am I getting?
Yeah, I just get a bonus one because I guess this is what I happen to be playing. Like, wow, what cool fun.
Like, round 5. I'm
sorry
supposed to be.
Yeah, sorry, Beasts player who's had to wait forever for a book, and as near as we can tell, we'll be waiting a lot longer, and no White Dwarf article in the clip anytime soon, apparently. I guess just you get to lose. I don't know what to tell you, man. Sorry about your luck.
Maybe I'll ban them till the Beast book comes out.
There you go. There you go. And then I have like alternative format options, self-imposed restriction awards. We talked about like Nuzlocke and stuff like that previously.
Yeah,
Those
that
can be
sounds
interesting
fun.
things to do. Where it's like if you bring a list that sort of coheres to this specific restriction set, then there's a special award just for that. 2-list format, like what NashCon uses. I love the 2-list format. I really do. Presents a lot of fun. Sideboards are sort of a lesser option of that. Sideboards are really hard in AOS because, like, how do you make that swap equivalently is tough. How do you mark it on your list and stuff like that? It gets really tricky. But whatever. We talked about raffles and door prizes earlier, and then TO comp. But yeah, Charlie, what do you think of when you think of special sauce or these other kinds of options?
Yeah, I think it's good to have variety, right? I really liked having more variety in AOS 2. I found the 20-year system a little bit uninspired in AOS 2, possibly because there was such a sort of I win, I get 18 at minimum, and so it ended up feeling kind of lackluster for being on the losing side. So I wanted more stuff in there. That's why I added schemes, which is sort of, I guess, a secret source kind of thing as well. So I'm all up for people putting those in, experimenting. I'm running some fairly standard tournaments at the moment because I'm trying to build up a base, like a player base right now. But absolutely, I want people to experiment, try weird stuff out. I'm going to a tournament next month at Badminton Cafe where everyone makes a 2,000 point army, and then you get a Gotrek on top of that. But you have to theme your Gotrek to the army. So I've got this guy, and I'm going to try to make a Gotrek Ungorson for my Beast of Chaos army, and that's going to be fun. So I'm really excited to try out other formats.
Yeah, and I think these can be little things that are impactful in the overall take, or they can be small things that, like, the game still plays as normal, the tournament still plays as normal, but then there's this sort of, like, side thing going on. Like, there's a great range here, right, of potential special sauce. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Tyler, what about you?
Yeah, it's been interesting seeing sideboards go away. You know, that was big early on, particularly when we were creating our own comp for the game prior to GHB 2016 back in the day. But we haven't seen that much. I haven't seen a tournament do a sideboard equivalent in a very long time. I don't know if you guys have seen anything.
It's just really hard, especially now that you're in like 5-point increments and weird model. Like, it's just it's hard to do. Like, it's not like with Magic it's simple. You get a 15 card sideboard. You swap 1 for 1, right? Like, okay, there you go.
Yeah. They're really not a thing in the UK. I've played in one, which is for a friend's birthday tournament. He ran a tournament for his birthday. He's actually running it this month too with a sideboard. But other than that, I've never seen it in the UK.
I was thinking about, Vince, we've had the discussion about the 2-list format. A lot of people, some people don't like it. They feel like it provides too much opportunity to cover all your bases. That's the benefit of a single list. And I mean, we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. We've had that debate before, but there's both sides of that. That's kind of the point in part about it. Arguably you're missing the point when you make that argument. But anyway, what about a sideboard format where instead of 2,000 points as your alternate list, you get like, you can change up to X number of points as your alternate list.
Sure, it's still
And then you
two
have to
lists,
play.
but it's limited as to how much you can alter the second list. Yeah, sure.
Exactly.
Sure. If it was like list one, both lists must share 1,500 points. You have 500 points of flex, right? So you got list one, second list, you can change up to 500 points. Great, it's contained. You're still either using list one or list two, right? Like, yeah, great, fine. That's effectively still the two list format, right? But it's with an extra bit of twist on it, right? It's the two list format with a lemon twist, and yeah, I'm fine with it. That's fine.
I mean, anything you do is going to be marked. If you're thinking about stats for the game, it's going to be marked as an aberrant stat, so it won't be included in all the statistics. You might as well just go wild and do what you want, because the players won't care. It's not being marked as a serious statistic, so just have fun.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Yep. So to me, I mean, this is always something I like to experiment with. I don't feel the great need to I don't feel the pressure to be a data contributor to an overall stat set. So like if the tournament's doing something fun and interesting that I like, cool, fine. If it's a good tournament that's run by good people and it's played pretty normal, also fine.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
This isn't like a requirement. It's just a bonus option. It's exactly that.
Right? Yeah. Like Rob and I
curious
made the scoring system so we could create a baseline of stats and like a system that could be distributed far and wide as like a basis, a standard for which people can look at and adhere to, and we can create good stats. If you're going to go outside that, go crazy, have fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, don't be concerned that your event's too weird. You're already outside the bound of the standard thing we've issued, so just have fun.
Right. And I think that in the same way I said, I hope that the people who really love chess clocks get their hardcore chess clock tournament. Like, and I mean that, by the way. I'm not being sarcastic. Like, just because I hate it, not every tournament needs to be for me. Right? There is a cohort of people who would really enjoy that sort of thing. That can be a special sauce for this tournament, right? That's fine. It's not going to be one I attend, but who cares? That's fine. It doesn't
Maybe
matter.
we could get a 40K player on sometime and have incidentally, I feel like, over the years, Vince, there are a number of topics that I find 40K players are more in tune with than the AOS community. Might be interesting to do a show where we have somebody from the 40K community on to talk about some of those things. This might be one where maybe we can get a little more informed alternate perspective.
Sure.
I would recommend Daniil, who plays 40k and AOS competitively. He plays 40k with chess clocks, AOS as well, and he's Mr. Zinch over here. He's the guy that sort of revolutionized change host back in AOS 2. So maybe you can do a Zinch show and then chat about that with him.
Nice. Nice. I love that idea. Very good.
One thing not on the list that, Charlie, I don't know if you had this, we are going to do it, is the whole attacker and defender roll-off.
Yeah.
Right now, if anybody doesn't know, the attacker is essentially getting all the benefit, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The attacker both picks sides and deploys first, so if you're both a one-drop, cool, the attacker gets all the goodies. As opposed, how are you doing?
In my pack, because I've pre-set the terrain, and that's the only benefit defenders get, I've just rewritten that rule. If you win the roll-off, you can either choose the side or choose the first drop.
Perfect. Yeah, simple.
Yeah. It's a little thing, but I agree. Like, I can't believe that they wrote into the standard rules that the defender does terrain stuff. Like, they have to know how tournaments work, right?
Yeah.
Like, they've seen a tournament. And you don't just walk up to the TO's table and be like, start playing 3-card Monty with their mountains. Like, what are we doing here, guys? Come on now.
And then, when do you roll for the mysterious terrain rules?
Right.
Like, do you roll it and then the defender moves the pieces around?
Right.
Do you move the pieces around then roll it?
Yet another thing that should never be tournaments. You should just walk up to the table and terrain is labeled. Right, like this is how the terrain acts. This is what it is. We've pre-labeled all of the terrain. Knock yourself out, right? And I love your then again. It also can make that the role you're talking about splitting more impactful, right? Because by choosing the side, and the other person chooses the drop, and so on and so forth. Then you get the benefit of the side. Well, the side's more impactful if you know that this side has a arcane piece of terrain on it. Cool beans. But then you don't have the drop choice.
I had taken out the mysterious terrain for simplicity, but I think I'm going to put it back in now. I think it just makes it much more interesting.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
It was a great point. It's a great point on the the attacker defender. Yeah, I mean it's usually all about arcane, and yeah, the chance of getting that, might really might persuade you to go in that route. I've also seen tournaments that will announce, okay, every table, all of our tables this round, game 3, are using Sinister. Everything's Sinister for this round. I think that's kind of interesting as well. If you don't maybe have, you want to have the hassle of pre-labeling everything. Like it can be a bit of a hassle doing that. Like that could be an alternative.
Man, I
a little
want to
less
be
work.
playing Slanesh when the damned call goes far and
Sure.
wide, because then it's just like, oh, hello depravity farm.
I do not want to play all Sinister with beasts.
Hey, do you have an army with crappy bravery? Knock one down.
Oh dear.
Technically, those stack, I suppose. I've never thought about it because I've never played on a table that's all Sinister. But I'm pretty
yeah,
sure
you're right.
Sinister is just if you're within an inch of it, you take -1 bravery. So if your beast unit was spread between 2 pieces of terrain, which is entirely possible that you'd be within 1 inch
Which
of
is
2
what
pieces
I
of terrain.
always want to do with Ungles.
Right. Then you get -2 bravery. Like you could have.
Oh yeah, bravery too. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not
Just-
saying it's a good idea. It's just an option. So,
I think it's interesting, but I think I'll just let players roll it out. It makes weird tables sometimes, but that's part of the fun.
Yeah, I think the Lumineth players over there with that spell where they have to roll above your bravery, just going like, well, easy out, move in, easy out, just like
Yeah.
whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like it should be pre-labeled. By the way, the existing list of terrain sucks. Just let me say that.
I've got a bag
I know.
full of old terrain. I've got to sort this out now.
Yeah, you
Sucks.
gotta pull out the all the other fun ones they got rid of. Can we just get 6 interesting things? You can keep the names the same so we can all keep our dice and stuff. But maybe could we just get a list where all 6 options do something of relevant value instead of just fishing for arcane? Maybe basically.
Yeah.
That's just minor ask here at the end of the show. All right, gentlemen, this was a great discussion. Charlie, thank you so much, buddy. I know it's a little
Thank you
late
for having
there.
me. It's been fun.
Absolutely, it's been great to have you on. Tyler, thank you as always, sir.
Yeah, man. Good times.
We hope this was helpful for all of you in thinking about the tournaments you want to go to and what you like, and for TOs out there, if you're thinking about running one, this could be for, hopefully some of this is thoughtful for even if you're just doing a local little one day or something like that in the shop. Cool. Like, think about this stuff. Hopefully this was helpful. Don't forget to hit that like button. Click like. It helps other people find the show. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're here every Wednesday, obviously. That's the whole thing. But thank you all. I loved all the chat. Loved all the interaction in this episode. You're all awesome. Oh yes, thank you. Sorry, Final Flash said and mystical. Good point.
Yeah.
Now that it's +1 to pray. Yep. But anyways, hit that like button. As always, we'll see you next Wednesday.